gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does the star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
It is now my pleasure for me to introduce our gubernatorial candidates. Our first candidate is Insurance Commissioner Ken Selzer. Our next candidate is Secretary of State Chris Kobach. Next, I am pleased to introduce Wichita businessman Mark Hutton. And finally, Wichita businessman Wink Hartman. Governor Jeff Colyer has withdrawn from tonight's debate. Let us first review the debate rules. Each candidate will have a 2-minute opening statement and a 1-minute closing statement. Each candidate will have the opportunity to answer every question. Candidates will be chosen in random order for each question. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question. If your response mentions another candidate by name, that candidate will be given 1 minute or less for rebuttal. I will hold up my hand when you have 15 seconds left, and I will ring that bell when your time is up. I would now like to introduce you to our moderator for tonight's debate, party volunteer Jennifer Zambecki.
Thank you, Ashley, and thank you, everyone. It's a real honor to be moderating this evening. How awesome is this? This is so fun. Thank you all so much for being here. It is a really great evening and great weekend to be a Republican in Kansas, and we are really excited to have you all here, so thank you. Okay, we've got panelists this evening who are going to be asking our questions. I will be joining them, and you'll hear a little bit about that as we go along. But first, I'm just going to quickly introduce the panelists, and then I'll call them up individually when it's time to ask their questions. Dennis Clary is the Government Affairs Director for Realtors of South Central Kansas. Rich Feltz is the President of Kansas Farm Bureau. Paige Huntgate is Wichita State University Student Body President. Go Shockers. And Tram No is Government Relations Manager for the Wichita Regional Chamber of Commerce. I'm going to invite our candidates to give 2-minute opening remarks in the order in which they are seated, which is alphabetically. So we will begin with Mr. Hartman.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the great introduction. I want to thank the Republican Party, Ashley and Kelly especially, for putting on this event. Also, I want to invite and thank everybody in Wichita that came out and everybody here this evening to partake in this great debate, especially my wife, who has stood beside me through thick and thin. Libby's been, as we say, on the trail and been with me through the last year and a half that I've been seeking this endeavor. But that said, my name is Wink Hartman. I am not trying to build a political resume. I am not trying to climb a political ladder. I have but one desire. That is to serve the people of Kansas, to help them fulfill their dreams, to help them fulfill the things that they want to do with their families and their children and their grandchildren. I was educated in the Wichita school system, worked my way through Wichita State University, painted houses, sold trash cans, sold desk blotter advertising. I did whatever it took to pay for one more semester at Wichita State. Today, I'm very fortunate. I am the CEO of Hartman Oil. I am the CEO of Chester's Chop House. I'm also the CEO of Jimmy's Egg. To continue on, CEO of Hart Marina, which I hope you've all been to. And last, but very, very important to me, I am the chairman of Vintage Bank Kansas. We now have 8 locations in small communities in and around Wichita. So during this evening's debate, we're going to be discussing taxation, KDOT, school funding, DCF. There's a lot of baggage that needs to be cleaned up in Topeka. And I can assure you, as a businessman all my life, I have the skills, I have the ability to put the right people at the conference table to get the job done for you, the people of Kansas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. Mr. Hutton, your 2 minutes.
Well, thank you. And good evening to the Kansas GOP. Thank you for allowing this opportunity tonight. I am Mark Hutton, and I'm running for governor to build a better Kansas. You see, I believe our state government isn't just broke, it's broken. And the people of Kansas are tired of the problems that's created. They're tired of hearing about our foster children sleeping on the floors of government offices. They're tired of hearing about our riots in our prisons and seeing our roadways ignored. They're tired of budgets that don't balance and the chaos and bad policy that creates. You see, they're simply tired of the games in Topeka. I believe our state needs a CEO, a proven leader, someone who knows how to run a large organization, has a positive vision for moving our state forward, and the management skills that are necessary to get things done. 25 years ago, I started Hutton Construction with little more than a $5 desk and an old truck. Today, it employs over 250 people and operates throughout the central United States. I built Hutton Construction by hiring really great people. I created a culture around them where they could thrive, but most importantly, I held them accountable to keep the promises we made to our owners. I believe that I can do the same thing for the state of Kansas. As your governor, I'll focus first on Kansas, not on my political resume. I'll keep Kansas first in what I do. I want to be somebody who cares more about Kansas than their own political career. Now, I believe that our state needs more transparency in its budget. It needs a process that's centered around good, solid business principles to evaluate against the return on investment and then hold our state accountable to follow that budget. I believe we need more transparency, and as your governor, I'll bring transparency to the people of Kansas so you can hold our government accountable. I'm running to build a better Kansas, and I hope you'll join me as we begin that journey. Thank you for that opportunity tonight. I look forward to this debate.
Thank you, Mr. Hutton.
Well, before I begin, I want to introduce my wife, Heather, and my kids, Lily, Reagan, Molly, Charlie, and Josie, who are here with us tonight. In the spirit of the Wizard of Oz, my daughter Lily brought her little dog too, but I want to assure you that is not the dog that is running for governor in the state of Kansas. Now, this morning I talked to some of the district groups and talked about how conservatism has seen some setbacks in recent years, and there are some who think the governor should just manage this decline, that's okay. Well, my approach is something different. I think we need a governor who's going to seize the conservative flag, retake the ground we've lost, and carry it into battle. Now, you know my record as Secretary of State. I promised that I'd bring us the safest elections in America. I promised that I would bring us photo ID at the polling place. I promised that I'd bring us voter registration with proof of citizenship. I promised that I'd prosecute election fraud if given the authority. And I promised I'd reduce the size of my office. And I delivered on each and every one of those promises. You know, talk is cheap, but results are something different. And I've delivered for the conservative movement, and I intend to do the same thing as your governor. And you know, it's not always easy. Sometimes you'll have opposition within your party, without your party, and oftentimes, in my case, from the ACLU. But I know that when the ACLU is against me, I'm probably doing the right thing. My priorities for the conservative movement in the years ahead are number 1, cutting taxes, number 2, reducing illegal immigration in Kansas, number 3, ending the culture of corruption, and number 4, protecting unborn life in Kansas. I believe we can make progress on all 4. Now, some say that on the taxation question, it can't be done. Well, I say Kansas doesn't have a revenue problem. It's got a spending problem. And in my agency, we got it done. We took my budget from $7.0 million a year when I started to 7 years later, $4.6 million. That's a 34% decrease. I'll take the same approach as governor. We will spend less in Kansas, I promise.
Your 2 minutes.
It's really good to be here this evening. Thank you very much to Jennifer and the Republican Party for this. My name is Ken Selzer. I'm a CPA. I worked as a businessman until you hired me, elected me to be your Kansas Insurance Commissioner 4 years ago. I'd like to introduce my wife, Deb. Deb is Deb is a very, very lucky Jayhawk that found a wildcat to marry. She's a lot happier than she was about an hour ago. Okay, you just won. But the really good news in all this is that we're still married after 37 years. That's the good news. So, I grew up in Gossel, just 50 miles north of here, on a farm, right in the heart of Kansas. I am a fourth-generation Kansan. I am a first-generation college graduate. Education has been transformative in my life. As your insurance commissioner, we drove down costs, we increased customer service, vastly increased it in our department. We treated every dollar as if it was your dollar. It made a big difference in how we ran the department. We had a third party step in and evaluate all insurance departments around the country. We didn't know what was happening. They rated Kansas as the second highest rated insurance department in the country. That was after we had reduced cost and improved customer service. That's why I'm running for governor. People wonder why we can't do that for the rest of the state. So why can I do it and the others can't? My skill set is especially suited for what we have right now. I'm a CPA. I'm a thoughtful, calm decision maker. Kansas hasn't grown very fast. We've been below the national average. We're going to lean in on costs. We're going to lean in on customer service, and we'll make Kansas grow again. Thank you.
As mentioned, the candidates will be invited to give 2-minute responses to the questions this evening, and we will be kind of randomizing the order of the answers that will be given. So for our first question, which will be asked by Dennis Clary, the candidates will answer in the following order. You're going to have to remember this, okay? Are you listening? Okay. No remindsies. Mr. Hartman, first. Commissioner Selzer, second. Secretary Kobach, third. And Mr. Hutton, fourth. Dennis?
Thank you, Jennifer. Good evening, gentlemen. Property taxes, they fund many important programs. However, realtors believe real estate has become burdened with an excessive cost of state and local government. In 2015, the Kansas legislature granted citizens the right to vote when cities and counties proposed property tax increases exceeding the rate of inflation. If elected, will you support retaining this legislation? And, given the many additional tax authorities that contribute to the total levy, what will be your approach to property taxes? Thank you very much.
That's a very excellent question. One that is very, very complicated, and one that's going to have to be dealt with by the governor as a very, very strong leader at the front of the line. Property taxes affect everybody in this room. Property taxes are very, very high. There's discussion today about raising the mill levy another 20 for education. We have to take and control our property tax lid because that is the very thing that slows growth in our economy in Kansas, stifles job growth. It is detrimental to the agricultural business especially, which is the big backbone of our state. So we are going to have to be diligent at all times to work within a budget, zero-based budgeting, prioritize. Property taxes have to be kept under control. The best government is the least government. When it comes to property taxes, that should be the vote of the people and only those people that it does affect.
Commissioner Selzer.
We are going to make Kansas grow again. Raising property taxes at the state level will not help with that. We are going to make Kansas grow again. Remember that. You asked the specific question about the county and the local level, and I do think that cap is probably good for now, and hear me out. There's a couple areas in there. Public safety could have an exception, and I know there's a real interest by cities and counties to have an exception for health benefits or benefits in general because they're rising so fast. I think local officials ought to be held accountable for taxes in their area. It's law now in Kansas, so we'll take it one step at a time. But property taxes, we need to avoid property tax increase at the state level at all costs. Thank you.
I'll meet your offer and I'll raise you one. Not only should we have legal limits on increases in the mill levy of taxes, we should have legal limits on the stealth tax increase of appraisal increases that are going up so high, they're forcing people out of their homes. At a minimum, we have the authority to do that by statute, so at a minimum we need a statutory limit on both of those types of property tax increases. Ideally, I'd like to see us get a constitutional amendment to lock it in, just in case that day comes when we don't have solid Republican majorities and there is an effort to take out those caps. So I absolutely believe we need both of those. You know, my first step into politics way back almost 20 years ago was when I was a city councilman in Overland Park. And I remember at that time, the stealth tax hike of appraisal increases was going up so rapidly that virtually every year we had to cut back the mill levy just to keep the tax level even for the taxpayer. In other words, we were rolling it back just to offset appraisals. That's ridiculous when cities throughout Kansas have to do that. Let me give you another example. Some of you know that Heather and I live on a small farm. We purchased this farm 7 years ago. And it's small, it's quarter section, but it is an actual agriculture producing farm. We grow beans and wheat, it's highland, so there's no irrigation. But you know, there's a little bit of income from the farm. And I thought that, hey, this is gonna be great. Not only do we live in a beautiful part of Kansas, we'll have a little extra income that I can put aside a few $1,000s every year for the girls' college education. Well, guess what? Because of appraisal increases over the last few years, every ounce, every penny that we are earning now on the crops is going to pay the county and the state. We are farmers, we are slave farmers for Kansas. We are growing our crops for the government, not for ourselves. That is ridiculous, and all Kansans have similar stories. Property tax hikes have to be limited.
Well, I appreciate the question because I'm the only one standing up here that's actually had to deal with it on the taxation committee in the state legislature. In 2016, there was a bill that was put forth dealing with the property tax lid, and I voted for that. I supported that. But in addition to that, I added an amendment that turned the tables on the appraisers because we have a problem in this state, and it is high appraisals. And the reason is we have appraisers working for county commissioners. I believe the first thing we need to do is separate the appraisal process away from the counties so that we have fair and competent appraisals that are market-based and market-driven. So the other thing we need, thank you. The other thing we need is an ability to flip the tables on our appraisers. Right now, the system is set up to where you're guilty until you prove yourself innocent. And then once you prove yourself innocent, they turn right around and put it right back on next year, and you got to go through it all over again. We have a serious problem with our appraisal system. It's based on computer algorithms that are oftentimes very inaccurate, and I believe we need to get back to more real-life appraisals, and I believe owners have the right to represent themselves with their own appraisal, and that becomes the benchmark for the people of this state. So I supported the property tax lid. I agree with Mr. Selzer that there are some areas that we need to make sure We don't handicap our counties and our cities with the right to take care of us on a safe manner. So I appreciate that question, and I want you to check my record. You'll see that I supported it.
Thank you all. Our next panelist question will come from Rich Feltz, and the order in which you will answer is Secretary Kobach, Mr. Hartman, Commissioner Selzer, and Mr. Hutton.
Thank you to each one of you who have been candidates for this prestigious position in our state. There's no question agriculture provides quite a base for our economy in the state of Kansas. But we have ag producers in states like California, Missouri, and Oregon that perpetually battle referendum and initiative issues that are driven by emotion and not sound science. What is your philosophy on the referendum and initiatives, and what will you support to assure agricultural producers and their elected bodies operate in a pro-growth environment?
It's really a two-part question. First about referendums and initiatives, and a little bit about agriculture. As far as referendums and initiatives go, you know, Kansas is one of the few states west of the Mississippi that actually doesn't have the initiative. And I think that's actually not a good thing. You know, sometimes when our system, like our Supreme Court, imagine our situation with our Supreme Court right now, where they are acting in a completely lawless manner, and I'd love to talk more about that. Legislature doesn't have majorities to stop them. We're going to try to get a constitutional amendment. I don't know if we will. But in a state where you had the initiative, you could actually get there through the people, and we could actually stop the lawlessness on our Supreme Court. So while I acknowledge that sometimes environmental groups try to abuse the initiative process, I also see that it's got positive value for the conservative movement too. I'd say overall it's probably a moot point though. In the last 100 years, no state has adopted the popular initiative. That's because it has to go through the legislature. So it's not going to happen. So let's get to the question I think that's more relevant is what can we do for our farmers? As I was saying, we actually live on a farm, and although it's a very small farm, we do actually have to deal with the same kind of federal government restrictions, the same kind of dips in crop prices, and the things that people that have much larger farm operations have to deal with. And I think one area where we as people in government can and should make sure something is done, and that is keeping the government out of the farmer's way. You know, the federal government under the Obama administration, under his Fish and Wildlife Service, did something that was outrageously damaging, not just to farmers, but to ranchers and to all kinds of people across the western third of Kansas, and that was the prairie chicken listing. Because we had a few years of low rain, the prairie chicken population went down just like the pheasant, just like the quail, just like everything else. And the Fish and Wildlife Service came in and said, okay, it's a threatened species, we're locking everything down. And in effect, the practical effect was no new structures built anywhere in the habitat, no drilling, all kinds of restrictions on production, and as a result, it hurt not only farmers but ranchers too. So we need to keep the federal government in its place. We need to do everything to help rural communities through rural opportunity zones and the like. But I think importantly, we also need to know when government needs to butt out.
Sorry, Commissioner Selzer. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Hartman is next. I'm sorry, that's probably my mistake when I when I gave the order.
Well, it's kind of unfortunate. Chris kind of took my thunder. Being in the oil business and the lovely prairie chicken, with no disrespect to the prairie chicken, the prairie chicken caused great strife within my family home, my budget, and my livelihood. We were not allowed if you were in certain zones. And this also does the ag, the farming community. Prairie chickens do unusual things at certain times of the day, and therefore they don't have little prairie chickens, and there was quite a fiasco. But that said, it is a laughable matter, but yet is very, very serious. It is intrusion by the federal government into the lives of not only the people in the oil and gas industry, but also the ag people and the protein people in western Kansas and throughout this state. We can no longer afford to have the mothership continually guide us into ruin. You know, the last time I noticed, I've never seen a cow grazing at Dillon's. The food comes from another spot. The protein is grown someplace else, western Kansas. The produce you see at the farms, I mean, the Dillon's, once again, is grown on a farm. So we need to be very, very realistic and help the farmers diversify their crops. I've talked to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of farmers. I'm very, very strong on hemp. As I always like to tell everybody, hemp will grow on asphalt. It doesn't need water. It doesn't need fertilizer. It doesn't even need to be loved. Just turn it loose, and it'll take care of itself. But that is diversify your crops so you have additional opportunities for income. Cotton. Once again, here's another crop you're seeing more and more and more in Kansas. And it's a very profitable crop. And now that you have the gens here available, so we need to help the farmers get the regulation and the government out of their way, clear the path for them to do what they do best, grow crops.
Thank you, Jennifer. I think our laws now are good the way they are on referendum. I truly do. But I'd like to talk about ag a little bit because ag is 42% of the Kansas economy. Kansas will not grow if ag does not grow. We will make Kansas grow again. I can tell you I am deeply rooted in ag, probably more so than any of the other candidates on this stage. I grew up on a farm, as I told you. I went to K-State. I married a farm girl, which I like to tell a story. She can climb a gate in the morning and put on an evening gown in the evening quicker than anybody you ever saw in your life. Good job, Deb. We own a farm now. If you know where the Lewisburg cider mill is, it's right outside. You look outside the front door and look over the picket fence. That is my soybean field. So I want you to know we're deeply rooted in ag. We understand ag better than just about anybody else in this group. And I'm proud of it. I'm very, very proud of it. We are going to make Kansas grow again, and ag has to grow in order for that to happen because it is such a big part of our economy. Thank you.
Well, look, if anybody's been paying attention to California, you know if they're doing it, we don't want to. The bottom line is that referendums, I think, are a pathway to other people governing your state. And I think we have enough problems with people coming in from outside of Kansas, telling us what to do, and then leaving us with the mess when they leave. Now, look, agriculture is, as Mr. Selzer said, 42% of our economy. And we do have to look at alternative crops. I think that is important, but there's another part of that story that we have to pay attention to. And that's vertical integration, value-added options to the crops we're growing. I was out in a little town out by Goodland the other day. We got a farmer out there who's growing pinto beans. He says, I can make a little bit of money on pinto beans, but I can make a lot more money when I package them for the U.S. Department of Agriculture and sell them about 1 million meals a day. I sell them to them. He employs 42 people in this town running this operation every day. Now that's vertical integration or value added to our industries. We have sectors all over Kansas that we need to be paying attention to. We have composites in Wichita. We have the Cancer Center in Lawrence. We have, Kansas City. We have transportation and technology in Kansas City. We have the InBath in Manhattan. We have composites in Wichita, and we have rural Kansas to take care of. And we can't have an economic development policy that just focuses on our metropolitan areas. We have to take care of our rural areas, and I believe our state can play a role in helping our farmers and our ranchers transition to more value-added options within our communities. That gives us a place to hire our young men and women when they want to come back to the farm and there's not room there, they can start an industry. Thank you.
I'd like to take a positive affirmation pause and thank you all for staying to your time with every question. I really appreciate it. Our next question comes from our GOP builders, and I just want to take a moment to say thank you to our GOP builders. Our Builders Club is for anyone who gives $2.18 a month to the Kansas Republican Party, and if $20, oh gosh, what did I say? $20.18 a month. They're like, you guys, I'm pretty sure it's more than that. And if you are a builder, will you please raise your hand so we can thank you and acknowledge you? So our builders were invited to submit questions, and one of the questions that they submitted, I will be asking, the first one, and your order to answer is Mr. Hutton, Mr. Hartman, Secretary Kobach, and Commissioner Selzer. The question is, recent national surveys indicate a majority of Republican voters believe the U.S. corrections system is locking up too many people for far too long, especially for nonviolent offenses. What changes, if any, would your administration propose to the Kansas corrections system? Mr. Hutton.
Well, look, I think what you're referring to is, I think, an initiative called Ban the Box. Look, my faith tells me that I need to believe in redemption. We all deserve redemption. And I do believe that we have instances within our criminal justice system where we continue to punish people who have paid the price for their crime. And I think we owe it to our people to believe that they can have a positive path forward, leaving their past behind. And it's an opportunity for us to partner with our corrections. And a good example is Hutton Construction. We work closely with the work release program that's ran here in Wichita, and we've had a number of men and women that have gone through that process. We have them working for us today. And they're great family people, they're productive, and they're great employees. And we're thrilled to have them. And I think it's an opportunity within our state to reevaluate how we punish our people. And let's get on with it. And when people have paid their price for their mistake, I think it's time we believe in redemption. Thank you.
Well, I have kind of a two-part answer because it affects me very, very personally. Being the owner, CEO of Jimmy's Egg, you have to be at work at 5 o'clock in the morning. Now, where are you going to get somebody that's going to get out of bed and show up at a job at 5 in the morning? Unfortunately, they come from the El Dorado prison. We hire almost 60 to 65% of the people that work at Jimmy's Egg, especially in the kitchen, because after they have served their time, it is very, very difficult for them to get out of the system and get back into a productive part of life. So we have been challenged, and we have answered the bell, if you will, to make sure that that happens. Now, the other part of the equation here, which is even more devastating to everybody in the room and your tax dollars, is our prisons have turned into a mental health ward. That is where we take care of our mentally challenged individuals. We do not, or no longer have, adequate services for those people that need it the most. The ones that are mentally challenged, which end up being homeless, which end up in emergency rooms, which start to take a drain off of your checkbooks. We need to start to figure out how to pay up front, in advance, because all we're doing is cycling these people a revolving door. If you serve 5 years, you have a chance to move forward with your life. But if you are mentally challenged, you can't break that cycle in those prisons, and you continually are funneled in the front door, out the back door, and back in the front door. We need to take care of the mental health problems in this state and quit putting those people in prison and stockpiling them in the dark.
I think the question goes to something where there is a real problem, and that is we in Kansas believe in justice. We believe that people who commit crimes should pay the penalty. And sometimes as we adjust the law, we adjust not only the maximum penalty, but we adjust the minimum penalty too. And sometimes that catches people up who probably don't belong in prison, and they end up staying in prison. So we have to be able to calibrate and go back and look at some cases and some ends of the correction spectrum where some individuals might not need to be there for very long or might not need to be there at all. And I want to compliment Wink for being part of a prison labor system. That is a wonderful intermediate penalty where the person is not spending his entire time behind bars, and that's a great way to not only gain some value, but help these people transition back into the community. So I think that's one thing that should be considered and expanded. We're already doing expanded further. The second thing I'd point to is something we're doing when I asked for the authority to prosecute voter fraud. That's a nonviolent crime. A lot of people said, oh, there can't be any voter fraud in Kansas, but as you know, the legislature gave me the authority to do so, and we've prosecuted about a dozen cases in the past 2 years that we've had that authority. About 9 of them have already gone to guilty convictions. The vast majority have been for double voting in more than one state. And we've also had several cases of non-citizens registering and or voting or attempting to register. But I mentioned that example because that's a case where I don't think prison time is appropriate. What I said to the legislature and what we have said to the courts is we don't want these people to go to prison. We want heavy, heavy fines. And as a result, we have gotten them from the judges. In some cases, an individual who commits voter fraud has paid a fine of in excess of $5,000. The point is, you may not need to spend time behind bars, but don't you think you're going to get away with it in Kansas. You are going to pay, it's going to hurt your pocketbook, and it's going to hurt bad. I think in many instances, that kind of penalty is the appropriate kind of penalty. And one quick word on another thing we need to think about as we look at our penal system and corrections. We often think that after a person has paid his dues in prison, I'll save this thought for later. All right, thank you. I want that compliment on the time again.
We are going to make Kansas grow again. Kansas can't grow if we don't have adequate labor. An important issue are the people we have in prison and getting them back to work, just like some other people mentioned already. We need to focus on the recidivism rate, which is incredibly high. We need to think about public-private partnerships. For example, why don't we think about dedicating some small amount of money from the state of Kansas with the big brothers and big sisters to better mentor children of people who have been in prison. Our incarceration rate in this state of those types of teenagers is way higher than a lot of other states. We aren't thinking very much about the future and about the recidivism rate and the cost, the incredible cost of sending people back to jail again. Let's figure out a way to get them to work. Let's bring together the mental health people. Let's bring together the corrections people and other people in business who are willing to hire people that may have a track record. I can tell you in my department, at the insurance department, we have to be very careful about anybody that's had a violent past or a financial fraud past because we don't want that person, even if it's been a ways in the past, we don't want that person sitting across the dining room table from your mom selling them an insurance policy. So we have to manage it. We have to manage it, and we can manage it. But the bottom line is we need to decrease that recidivism rate. When we get 50 or 60 or 70% of people going back in that have been in, we have lost the battle with a very costly correction system. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next panelists will be Paige Huntgate from Wichita State University. Go Shockers. And the candidates will answer in the following order. Commissioner Selzer, Mr. Hutton, Secretary Kobach, and Mr. Hartman. Paige?
Good evening, everyone. Just wanted to say thank you for being here. As you could guess, I'm a student, so I'm here to talk to you about education. Inconsistency and instability loom over education funding, and many are concerned about where this puts the quality of the education we provide. As governor, what concrete and specific plan, I'll underline that, concrete and specific plan, do you have for K-12 and higher education funding that prioritizes Kansas students who are the future of our state?
Thank you. Thank you, Paige, for a very, very good question. I just want to share a little bit about my educational background. We said earlier that I was a first-generation college student, incredibly transformative in my life. Different things my wife and I have done together because Gossel High School gave me a $250 scholarship, because I showed promise when I was graduating from K-State. I was able to stay at K-State my freshman year with 2 other part-time jobs. We give scholarships back to Gossel High School, to Debs High School, to K-State, to the Kansas Society of CPAs. We are focused on education. What are we going to do to improve education in Kansas. We're going to hold education accountable. And I look at the legislators that are here, and I know the struggle that we have. We need metrics, and we need to hold accountable for output. If we don't get better output that's more aligned to industry, and we're trying to take steps in that way, but we need the full weight of the governor behind that. We absolutely need to make progress in that area, or we'll never get to where we want to be. There's all kinds of things we can do. We can incent schools based on output rather than fully based on input. There's some suggestions at the technical college level that we do that. The universities better aligning themselves with their output for what industry needs. K through 12 and preschool. Preschool, if we wait till third grade to see if somebody is reading ready or not, we are way too late. They have to be reading ready when they come to kindergarten. That's the responsibility of the parents, but we need to think about that whole spectrum, or we'll never get to where we need to be with an accountable education system. Accountability and metrics. Remember that, please. Thank you.
Well, there's really two questions in there. One's about higher ed and the other's about K through 12, so I'm going to try to ram through both of those. Let's start with higher ed. I've served on countless number of industry advisory boards to Kansas State University and other educational institutions. And the bottom line is our higher ed process needs to be much more nimble to meet the needs of our industries in this state. And I believe we can form a better partnership that would be related to that. We have a start with that out at Wichita State at the Innovation Campus. But if we do this right, our industries will help support monetarily our education system. Because look, we're going to pay for it one way or the other. When we hire a graduate that doesn't have the skill sets we need, we have to train them. And that's dollars out of our pockets. And I, as a businessman, would much rather put that into a partnership with higher education and get the employee I need. K through 12 funding begins with two things. One, we have to clear up this constitutional amendment issue and tell the Supreme Court, the Sebelius Supreme Court, to butt out. We have a problem within this state. That said, that we have a problem in this state that the question still lingers. We want the best education for our children, and we want to know that we're putting the money into our system that takes. And until we answer that question, that question is that's gonna linger out there, and Kansans want to know the answer to that. So it begins with taking the gloves off of this mentality that we can't look at K through 12 funding that's 52% of our budget. We have to partner with education to dig deep down into our budget, find the areas we can celebrate the successes, and then let's work together to find where we can improve. Was that the bell? Okay. Sorry, I was talking so loud. So we can do better, and we will. I'll get you an answer to that question.
Thank you.
I think really the way we should frame the question is not how much we spend on K through 12, but where we spend the money. Let's do a quick mathematics exercise, all right? 25 students in a classroom. We're spending an average of $14,000 per student. Do the math. That's $350,000 going into that classroom. The average teacher makes $55,000. Let's say that the school is spending about $45,000 on computers, books, and stuff in the classroom. So that in the classroom we're spending $100,000, but we're spending overall $350,000 for that classroom. Where's the other $250,000 going? I'll tell you a couple of places where it's going. It's going into administrative buildings that look like the Taj Mahal. It's going into things that make no sense, and it's going into administrative expenses that can't be justified. Did you know that over the last 25 years, the number of teachers in Kansas has only gone up 13%, but the number of administrators in Kansas has gone up 33%. Did you know that there are more than 90 superintendents who make more than the governor? Did you know the average salary of a superintendent is $110,000? I don't think we need to spend all this money on high-paid administration and super nice buildings. Look, I went to Washburn Rural High School in Topeka. We had our English classes in a single-wide mobile home trailer in the gravel parking lot out back. We used beat-up textbooks, and guess what? Somehow I managed to get into Harvard. It didn't hurt my education. Throwing money at schools doesn't work. 20 years ago, we were spending a total state, federal, local $3 billion on Kansas K through 12. Now we are spending $6 billion on Kansas K through 12. We have doubled it in 20 years, way past the rate of inflation. And what have test scores done? Level. No improvements whatsoever in test scores. Throwing money doesn't work. Doing the same thing over and over again, even when the Supreme Court tells us to, is the wrong thing to do. The question is, where do we spend the money, and telling the Supreme Court to get out of our way.
Well, the elephant in the room has been for multiple years K-12 funding. Fortunate for all of us, in 2 minutes we're going to solve the problem that the administration hadn't solved in 7 years. So now that I have a minute and 45, I'm going to explain to you how it can be done. I refer to the educational system K-12, there's this gigantic umbrella of management. And this umbrella of management, like H. Ross Perot once said, has a sucking sound. When money comes to the table, it has a tendency to disappear up into this umbrella, never to be seen again. And it sure doesn't educate your children and your grandchildren, because that money is gone. Let's start to look at how we're going to take and teach these children. We have today in K-12, the K through 5 to 6 is a much smaller group than what we have in the, say, K-7 through 12. The next group, the next generation of students coming through is a much smaller population, but yet we're in the mood to put $900 million more into education this year. $290-some thousand, $300 million. And now we're talking about another $600 million. Ladies and gentlemen, I need to assure you, you do not have $900 million. So let's start worrying about taking the monies we do have. Let's prioritize. Let's put that more into the instructional environment. There's a novel thought. Instructional environment. So Tommy and Judy hopefully will get an education, and the taxpayers will get a return on their investment, which they deserve. It's called accountability, transparency, and teaching our children to lead a better life as they go through.
One thing I've learned so far is that positive reinforcement works. So thank you again. Our next panelist question will come from Trom No, and the candidate order will be Mr. Hutton, Commissioner Selzer, Mr. Hartman, and Secretary Kobach. Trom.
Good evening, everyone, gentlemen. Our aviation and advanced manufacturing employers have voiced their critical need for trained and skilled workers. The jobs are here. How will you utilize the role as governor as an opportunity to attract new talent to Kansas and build the trained workforce needed to keep Kansas winning in these key industries? Thank you.
Well, no doubt, the aviation industry in Kansas, and especially in Wichita, is very important, and we can't grow that without the proper workforce. Matter of fact, we have that same problem throughout Kansas. It's just not indigenous to aviation. I was out in western Kansas, and we have farmers and dairy organizations out there, operations, that cannot expand because they can't get the people. So we need, first and foremost, I think we have to continue to reinforce our workforce education process. I'm a big fan of Education Commissioner Randy Watson's initiative where we start talking to children in the 9th grade about what their career path is going to be. And we work with their parents to set up a education path that fits them and fits their passion, because that's how you keep them in the jobs you want. So we have a great opportunity to do that all across this great state of Kansas. We don't have to just focus on aviation. But we also, I applaud the budget that increased the amount of funding that's going in to vocational training. We have a great start on that, but I was talking to some leaders in the vocational industry now that says that, again, we're upside down on that. We have more students that want that than we have money going into the system, and they're at a point now where they only get about 80% reimbursement in vocational training, and it's unsustainable. So the state needs to take another look at that, prioritize that. That needs to be our top priority, because if we don't have the workforce, industry cannot grow.
Excellent points. I'd like to take it a step further. We are going to make Kansas grow. I think you've heard that before. We are going to make Kansas grow. One of the things on top of what Mr. Hutton just said is we are going to gas up the Commerce Department. We are a department in the state government. The Commerce Department does a lot of reporting, a lot of gathering, has a lot of programs. It has a program called AID, Align with Industry Demand, where they can customize programs, training programs, specific to an industry, specific to a company's needs. We need to ramp that up rather than spending so much time bringing in companies that don't align with what we really need. We're going to focus on taking care of the companies in Kansas so that they can get an adequate workforce. That is the chokehold on Kansas growth right now. It's not companies coming in, it's getting an adequate, well-trained workforce here in Kansas. We are going to focus on that like a razor. We're going to be like a laser. We're going to be spot on and considering everything we can possibly do to help identify needs in industry and leverage public-private partnerships so the state doesn't have to spend so much money to do it. Spending an effort to bring in 60 employees from across the state line in the Kansas City area that takes 2 years to develop on the same day that we lose 280 employees to another state just doesn't make sense. If we are more focused on the needs of our companies and aligning our workforce to meet their customized needs, we'll grow a lot faster. We wonder why we struggle on the growth rate. We aren't focused on the right thing. Thank you.
Well, I've been very, very fortunate in the last year. I have visited every single junior college. I have spoken to every single president of those junior colleges. I have talked to most all of the VOTEC centers in this state. SB 155 is a program where seniors can take and go to a center of their choice, and the VOTEC will be reimbursed a certain amount of money, which is decreasing yearly. The program is in a shambles. It is unfunded from where it was originally set, which is also very detrimental to kids staying in Kansas. The first thing we need to worry about is retention. Everybody talks about job growth. We create jobs. Well, I've created thousands, so I think I know from which I speak. But the reality is, the first thing on the board should be job retention, keeping those kids in a VOTEC center, in a junior college, or a college of higher education. Today, it is said many, many times, there is a need for 5,000 welders in this state. If we had 5,000 welders in this room, they could all get jobs. But yet we do not have enough facilities to train that many welders. Electricians, plumbers, heat and air. Those people, after a couple of years out in the real world with a job, all of a sudden they're making $75,000, $80,000, and $85,000. So we have the need, we have the capabilities. We need to unleash the dog, if you will, and let those kids go to the level of education that fits their needs, not the needs of the educators. It's about the kids. It's not about the money, and it's not about the rosy future at some college where they will probably last a semester or two, and then once again, we have problems at all different levels. So let's put the kids in the right place at the right time.
answer yet, and it's an answer that's sitting right in front of us in Sedgwick County, the Wichita State Innovation Campus. That campus is an incredible answer to the question where you're having private sector and public sector partnership so that the kids, the students, are learning right alongside the professionals in aviation and engineering exactly the skills that they're going to need to use in the aviation and engineering industries. And in addition, it's higher education that is partly funded by the private sector. So it takes some of the weight off the taxpayer. That's one of the best answers, but my second answer is this one, and I'm surprised I'm the first person to say it. Look, if you're deciding where to put a company, what do you look at? You look at the bottom line. Right after the disastrous $1.2 billion tax hike of 2017 was forced upon Kansans, I came down here to Wichita within a couple weeks of it passing, and I spoke to two people from two different small aviation companies that were moving the companies to Colorado. I said, why are you doing it? They said the tax hike. It made that much of a difference on the bottom line. If we continue to have these high taxes, we are not going to be able to retain the businesses that we have, and we're not going to be able to attract new businesses to Kansas. The numbers matter, and that outrageous tax hike is absolutely absurd. Our top tax rate goes from 4.6 to 5.7%. That's a 1% change in the company's bottom line when you take into taxes. That's too much to impose on these companies. And to add insult to injury, the legislature did this 2 years after the largest sales tax increase in Kansas history. That's outrageous. We now have the 8th highest sales taxes in the country. We are now the high tax state in the 5-state area. Used to be Nebraska was the high tax state, and we were the low tax state back in 2013. And I know what effect taxes have on people. My mother and father-in-law are here tonight. One of the reasons they left Nebraska and moved to Texas was because they were being overtaxed as retirees in Nebraska. It has an effect on everybody, from individuals to companies. If we want jobs, we need lower taxes.
Our next question comes from GOP Builders, but before I move on, let's thank our panelists again for being here and for their participation. The order of answers for this question will be Secretary Kobach, Mr. Hutton, Mr. Hartman, and Commissioner Selzer. And the question is, transparency in our state government is on a lot of voters' minds. What changes, if any, would you propose to make to the laws and regulations for government transparency in our state? Secretary Kobach.
This has been in the news recently, but those of you who were watching when I had my launch of my campaign in June of last year noted that that's what I was talking about when I said culture of corruption. The way corruption festers and grows in a polity is when it is hidden, if there's no light shown on the corruption in the system. I think one of the worst things that we have in Kansas in our system of government, it would be easy to solve, is that we don't record committee votes in the Kansas legislature. Now, this morning, some of you heard me in the district meetings, I talked about a recent hearing I was at, trying to stop in-state tuition for illegal aliens, and that has got to end. And I was in this committee. Committee's got 6 Republicans and 3 Democrats. It should be a slam dunk. It should be easy to get that bill out of committee. But what happened, I was told by the leadership after the hearing, we've only got 2, maybe 3 votes in the committee. The other Republicans are going to vote with the Democrats against the bill. It happens all the time. And the reason those Republicans aren't held accountable is because the committee votes won't be recorded. And so when a real Republican wants to primary that Republican in the primary races coming up, he won't have a record to say, look, here's how he voted in committee. That's the transparency that matters. That is exactly what needs to be done. Now, we can do other things for transparency. One thing that the administration just announced, which I don't think is actually a good idea, is they said we're going to pay the first $100 of a person's CORA request. You know what CORA requests are? Kansas Open Records Act requests? We make all these public documents available to people, and then he said, well, let's just pay the first $100. I think it's a bad idea. If anyone who's been the receiving end of a court request knows, the left has weaponized court requests. The ACLU uses them. The Soros-backed organizations use them. They use them to try to hijack the agencies, slow the agencies down, and at least if we can say, well, you want to do all this, you want all this information, you want to take 5 of our employees offline to collect information for you, you have to pay for it. So I think we need to be very careful about what we do. Yes, we want transparency, but let's make it transparency that matters. Transparency in votes.
Well, I believe our government needs to be a glass building. And so when the people and the taxpayers of this state look at their government, they can see all aspects of it. I relate transparency to when as a builder, we want to make sure we don't have any customer problems. So look, transparency is not how you answer a customer's problem. Transparency is not having the problem. Transparency is that you gain the confidence and trust at such a level with the taxpayers that they don't question your integrity and how you're doing business. Now, I support the CORA, and anytime anybody wants information, I think that's government's responsibility to give it to them, because I don't have anything to hide. And we have to gain our trust with our people, and anytime we say we're not going to give you something, it may not affect that person, but it raises a question over here in our good citizenship of what are we hiding? So we have to be as transparent as possible and not have situations where we have good old boys getting economic incentive deals and other opaque transactions where we don't tell our public who's getting the benefit of your tax dollars. So we have to do a better job in transparency. Thank you.
Well, I have to admit, Chris took the immediate thunder of how bills come out of committee all times of the day with no discussion, no conversation, and they're voted on. Sad as it is, we don't know who votes, when votes, or what they vote for. It comes out of committee and it's voted for and it just is put to bed immediately. That is not transparency. That is doing your work at night in the dark where the people in this room cannot see. That is not the way it should be. There's multiple other problems in Topeka. Personal cell phones. Why do your elected officials transact your business on their personal cell phone? I will suggest to you that is not transparency, that is foolishness. They also use their personal emails. If not on their phone, at their laptops at home, sitting in the parking lot in their car. That is not transparency. You have no way to know what one of your elected officials is doing when they're on their own personal devices, because they are theirs. That is part of the many things that need to be corrected, so you, the people that are writing the checks, paying the bills, for everybody in government to be open and above board. And I also understand what Chris is saying. All they're going to do is use the facility to file suit, to spend more of your tax money with lawyers to take and try and tear apart something that we, the people, have tried to create. So let's be very careful while we use this word transparency. It's often used, but rarely followed. In my administration, it will not be a word, it'll be a way of life.
Any well-run organization, government or business, is transparent. It is always transparent. It is shown that the more transparent you are, the more open and the more encompassing and embracing you are, the more profitable you'll be, the better your organization will run. We are an open book in the insurance department. We don't have any pending open records requests. We answer them when they come in. I want you to know that we're there and readily available. We manage our department like we want the state to be managed. Carefully, transparent, thoughtfully, and leaning in on costs and leaning in on customer service. Transparency has a lot to do with customer service. We're always going to be thinking about that. We've been incredibly successful. We'll be incredibly successful on the transparency issue at the state level because we know that the more you know, the better off we'll be as a state. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question from our Kansas GOP builders is, and the order in which you are answering is Mr. Hartman, Mr. Hutton, Commissioner Selzer, and Secretary Kobach. The question is, funds have been swept from the state's transportation fund each year for the last several years to balance the budget and fund other line items. Do you think this is a sustainable way to balance the budget? And how would you approach this issue as governor? Mr. Hartman.
For once, I get to go first. This is very, very important. We all know the terms. We all understand what it's about. The Bank of KDOT has been used multiple times, and so correctly. We're talking about $500 million is being swept and put in the state general fund. This has been going on for years and years and years. We will never, ever be able to balance our budget, prioritize our spending, and put our arms around the gigantic debt that is being created daily in Topeka. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to pump the brakes. It's time to put the checkbook in the desk drawer, if not for a day, hopefully for a week or two. The time has come where we find ourselves we must wean ourselves off of this candy called money, this free money that we take out of the KDOT. We now have the second best highway system in the United States. We're number 2. Very, very, very important. But there's one thing that I've talked about all over the state, and it's something that very, very few people are recognizing today. It's called 25,000 bridges in the state of Kansas. 25,000 bridges. And I can assure you here and now, the majority of them need repairs, to serious repairs, and replacement. Now, where is the money going to come from? So when you go across the bridge to Walmart to get your prescription, you take your kids to school, you go to the doctor, you're going to be going across bridges that have seen a better day. We'd better take and put this on the table now, start the discussion, because before we know it, we're going to need billions and billions of dollars to help all of these counties replace those bridges.
So we have a transportation program that's the T-Works that's now into, I believe it's 8th year, so we have 2 years left. There's essentially nothing left there to do because all the funds have been used up. So I propose that we would start over. And we would start over and take away the sales tax component of our highway funding program because it's inconsistent. It also is proven to be too easy to fiddle with. So we have 2 other parts of our funding program, of funding our highways. We have federal funds, and we also have the fuel taxes, which by federal law say they can only be spent on highways. So we start with that, and we develop a plan on those 2 funds that are certain and sure. And we work with the industry and our communities to set up a program that starts with maintenance first. Because if you're not taking care of your truck today, you're walking tomorrow. So we have to take care of our roadways first that we have, and then we look at the enhancements that we can do with the money we have. And as our state climbs out of the economic issues that we have, we start looking at building new highways. So I believe that we have an opportunity in our state to develop a comprehensive highway plan that's sustainable and will take care of our needs with the 2 funding mechanisms that we have.
Infrastructure is incredibly important to making Kansas grow again. And infrastructure is not just highways, it is aviation, it is the broadband system, the backbone of the broadband system, other aspects to make us, enable us to better transport goods, transport information, and do all of those things. Infrastructure has been incredibly important to the very successful intermodal in Johnson County, to a number of other economic development projects around the country, around the state. Very, very critically important. Here's where we're going to start. We know $1.1 billion is spent every year in operations, or around about that number, in operations of KDOT. We're going to lean in on costs so that we all know that we are operating at the very most efficient rate we can in KDOT. We think we can shift at least $50 million from operations over into new construction. We're going to focus on that. We also know that we're issuing $200 million a year more in bonding in addition to the amount that's being swept. We've got a total of $1.6 billion in outstanding debt coming from our highways. That has to stop, partly because some of that is being used, 20-year bonds being used for 10-year projects. Does that make any sense to you? We need to focus on being as absolutely efficient as we possibly can in KDOT, shifting some of that money to new construction that will help us in economic development, and then try to grow our state. I think if we can get up to, over time, up to, in a short time, to at least half of the amount that is being swept, and stopping that borrowing that is mushrooming, we need to do that. Thank you.
Well, I like the way Wink put it. Every year, the legislature robs from the bank of KDOT, right? I mean, that's what happens. Obviously, it's a bad idea. Obviously, we'd like to see that stop. But let's go to the root causes. The root causes are that the legislature is finding it difficult to balance the budget without robbing the bank of KDOT. Now, what I have said is we are going to cut spending across the board. And that's how we get the legislature in a position where they don't feel like they have to rob from the bank of KDOT. Now, I told you that my agency's budget went from $7 million to $4.6 million in a 7-year period. What happened to total state spending over that same 7-year period? It went from $4.7 billion up to $16 billion last year. So state spending went up $1.3 billion while my agency was going down. Okay, how did we do that? Did I have massive layoffs? Oh, you know that horrible conservative Kobach, he was probably putting people out on the streets, wasn't he? No, what we did is we went through natural attrition. Government can shrink because we have too many employees in it. Did you know that Kansas ranks number 3 in the nation in the number of state and local employees per capita? Number 3 in the nation. We're not California, we're not Illinois, we're not New York. We are 3rd worst in the nation. So what I did in my agency is I said to my deputies when I came in, if someone leaves, they retire, or they find a job in the private sector, let's see if we can stop replacing them, avoid replacing them. Every time we can avoid replacing someone, take their responsibilities, give them to somebody else or to several other people, let's do it. And that's how we shrunk the workforce by 18% over 7 years. I'm going to direct the agency heads in the statewide as governor to do the same thing. Shrink the workforce through natural attrition. Well, how do you know it's going to keep going? 2 words, baby boomers. The baby boomer generation has started retiring starting in the year 2011. Did you know that 11,000 baby boomers are retiring every single day across the nation? A large number of those are in Kansas. And when they retire in Kansas government, we're going to try not to replace them, and we will shrink the size of government. Thank you.
Thank you. The order for the next question, which comes from our Kansas GOP builders, is Commissioner Selzer, Mr. Hutton, Secretary Kobach, and Mr. Hartman. And the question is, well, all of you have talked about cutting costs in our state budget. What are the specifics of your plan for implementing a state agency-wide cost-cutting measure?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. Let's go back to my original theme. We were always going to be leaning in on costs. we don't know that we're operating as efficiently as we can. I know that in my department, we clearly were not operating as efficiently as we can. We are going to wake up every morning, think every day, 24/7, on how we're going to lean in on costs. And that's not just a one-sided equation. We can improve our customer service, so we can avoid these incredible wait lines we have in Medicaid and other places, DCF, all these issues around the state. We can think simultaneously about leaning in on costs, making big accomplishments there, and leaning in on customer service at exactly the same time. I just shared a few comments about KDOT earlier. I think we can squeeze some real money out of there and dedicate that more to new construction, which we need for economic development. We're going to look around the whole state. I am a CPA. I'm going to be thinking about running the state efficiently and making Kansas grow again. We can do better with a leaner state because we can make investments in our future. We really need to do that. We can't just implement an ideology. We need to manage that ideology or it gets out of control. We saw that with Medicaid. We've seen that in other places in Kansas. We need to think about the long-term future and how we manage something when we put it into place. Otherwise, we balloon out of control, and we have the situation that we do now. We're going to lean in on costs.
So I get asked that question all the time, does Kansas have a revenue problem or a spending problem? And my answer to that is we probably have a spending problem, but it may not be like you think. It could be that we're spending way too much in this place and not enough over here. And the reality is we don't know because nobody in the governor's office has done the hard work to dig into this budget and start figuring out how we're spending our money and relating that, like any businessman does, to the return on investment it's providing. So look, I think we have opportunities to dig in on this budget. I think we have opportunities to grow our way out of our problems through economic development, but we have to be diligent in how we look at our spending and prioritize that. Now look, when you're on the Appropriations Committee, like I was, you walk in on the third day of session and the state budget is 2 3-ring binders about this thick, about 10 inches. And in that are summaries of $14 billion worth of spending. So what happens is the legislature gets a grand total of a couple hours a week for the session, or a couple hours a day for the session to go through that budget. Now I will tell you that I don't believe any businessman in this room would run and create budgets like that in a secret, like the governor does right now, and then turn around and dump it in the lap of the legislature and say, you figure it out. Because that's what's been happening. It's incumbent upon this governor, and as your governor, I'll do this, we will dig into the budget, but we're not going to stop there. We're going to educate the legislature on how we're spending the money. We're going to put daylight on those expenditures, and then we're going to collaborate with the legislature on how we prioritize that spending. So when they come into session, they will have had a conversation with this governor about how we're spending your money and figuring out ways to do a lot better job.
So I already started answering this question in my previous response, so let me give a few more specifics. So when you do cuts through attrition, you do it this way. You say every time that there is somebody who leaves the agency, we're going to try to see if we can do without them. Now, you don't have to do it every time because there will be some employees that you just have to replace. You just have to have someone in that particular slot. But you can do it most of the time. And over time, in the 7 years I was there, in 2 out of 3 cases, we did hire someone, but in 1 out of 3, we didn't. But that was still enough because of the natural churn of the workforce, people moving into and out of the private sector. We still got an 18% reduction in the agency's payroll. And that translates into savings in the future because then you have fewer CAPERS dollars, fewer CAPERS obligations down the road. So that's one way to do it. The second thing I'm going to tell the agency heads after we take office is we need to adopt the penny plan in Kansas. How many of you have heard of the penny plan before? It's another very simple, common sense approach to those of us who believe that it's our money, not the government's money. The penny plan is, okay, for every dollar you spend next year, you are going to cut 1 penny. Every dollar next year, you're going to cut away a penny from what we spent this year. In other words, we're going to have a minimum of 1% cuts in every agency. Now, I'm telling you, there is no agency on this planet that cannot cut 1% of its spending. We can do that in Kansas. We'll do it in the first year, and then I'll say, okay, good job, guys. Let's do it in the second year, and let's do it in the third year. So that's yet another way we're going to achieve real cuts. And by the way, when we say cuts as Republicans, we mean cuts. We don't mean Democrat cuts where they say the rate of increase will go slightly slower. I mean real cuts, fewer dollars next year than we're spending this year. Once we do that, then we can start returning the money back to the people of Kansas. And I am serious when I say I want to roll back the tax hike of 2017 and the sales tax increase of 2015. We have got to become a low state tax again. And the way you do that is by taking a systematic approach to how we spend money. And hopefully, once we start doing that, businesses will start coming back into Kansas. You know, it's funny, right when President Trump was doing the right thing to get our nation's economy going, Kansas is going in the wrong way. We need to go the right way with lower taxes to bring people back into Kansas.
What if I were to tell everybody in this room tonight that I could hand you a book, not a fairy tale, I could hand you a book that would tell everybody in this room how you could save several $billion in state government. All you have to do is read the book. 273 pages of that book, $2.6 million is the cost of that book. It is the A&N study, which has now been out for, I believe it's been 2 years, and it's been laying on desk in Topeka from the time it was published. Undiscussed, unapproached, with no one having the ability to begin the process of reining in state spending. We have a Department of Education. We had a gentleman up there that was supposed to be all-knowing and all-seeing. For some reason, unbeknownst to anybody, he decided to send millions and millions and millions of dollars to all the school systems, 5 or 6 to be specific. Unfortunately, he said, well, somebody told him back when that maybe you might want to spend the money and send it for transportation. But we never could nail down the reality of it. So what happened? Well, in my world, that individual probably would be looking for another place of employment. But like DCF, like this particular instance, 2 pats on the back, no pay deduction, no slap on the hands, and we all go forward. We need to start and audit these departments. Start with the education department. We need audits. We need to know where the money's going, who's wasting it. There's nothing magical. I do audits at my own companies. It's a good business practice. Why is a good business practice good enough for you and me, but not the people in Topeka?
Our last question comes from our Kansas GOP builders. Again, that's $20.18 a month. And I want to ask everyone to join me in thanking the Kansas GOP builders again for all their support of the Kansas Republican Party. So this will be the last question, and then we will have closing remarks. And the answer order for this question is Mr. Hartman, Commissioner Selzer, Secretary Kobach, and Mr. Hutton. And the question is, as governor, how will you ensure our rural communities have local access to quality health care? Mr. Hartman.
You know, that is an excellent question, and I'm very, very pleased that it was included before the evening came to an end. Rural health care. I can do it at 1/3 of the cost. I can do it more efficiently. And I can provide the people of rural Kansas, Wichita, Kansas City, everybody an opportunity to have that very care. How are you going to do that? Well, I refer to it as concierge medicine. Doctor on call. Call it what you will. The cost of the system to have that is 90% less than the medical care we know today. A blood test under this system is $10. Blood test, if you go to the standard medical practice, could be several hundred. If you put your insurance card out, it might turn into $500 or $600. We all know what happens when they see the insurance card. We've all lived through it. Rural health care, we've got to change the way we do it. The emergency rooms. The emergency rooms, I've been in the emergency room in Garden City on a Friday night. Been there, done that. Well, I can assure you, the people that are in the emergency room should not be there. If they were allowed in Garden City's hospital, they could send them across the street to the clinic at 8 o'clock in the morning at a tenth the cost. But they're not allowed to do that. They have to provide the service. We need to take and look at a different way to provide medical service. Better, less cost. Doctors on call. Concierge medicine will take care of that in rural communities and the rest of our great state.
We have some excellent examples where rural health care is working. Marysville is a good example. Rooks County Hospital is an excellent example. Other places, we all heard about the Independence Hospital that closed here maybe 2 years ago. And wouldn't you know, new facilities and new types of delivery of medicine came in from Parsons and another close by healthcare community. We need to help encourage the dissemination of best practices, the discussion of best practices. Part of the issue in rural communities is that we don't have management who understand or have been close or have any reason to know the management of healthcare facilities. We need to help facilitate at the state level the communication between the successful ones and the ones that haven't been so successful. There's other opportunities. I think KU has affiliated with maybe 40 or so rural hospitals on some of their specific programs. There's a lot of ways we can make it work in Kansas. We're going to stay focused on it and do what we can to help those communities understand how to run a hospital, how to attract providers. That's part of the really big issue, is actually getting a provider there, a doctor or a physician or a PA or somebody in a very rural setting. But we can learn from the successes, because we have successes in rural Kansas on the delivery of health care. You'll see us facilitating those discussions. Thank you.
Three things. Two things we do want to do, and one thing we don't want to do. First thing we want to do is we want to continue and expand rural opportunity zones. In many counties, those are working really well to bring doctors in, giving them tax incentives to come back and maybe come back to the county where they grew up, maybe to come into Kansas from Nebraska, maybe to come in from Colorado, whatever. But those are actually getting the doctors in. You got to have the doctors there if you're going to have the care there. That's one thing we absolutely need to do. The other thing we need to do is we need to have an expansion of healthcare cooperatives or pools, cost-sharing pools. Now, to get that done, we must end Obamacare. And to get that done, we need to continue to lean on Congress. Our congressional delegation is a good one, but governors can lean on Congress as well, and I will. We absolutely have to end Obamacare so that we can then have these cooperatives rise up, fill that void where they can reduce costs. We don't have to have everybody having a Cadillac plan. Everybody's just got to have a plan that fits what they need, not one size fits all like Obamacare. So you have to have those cooperatives so that people can actually pool the resources they have to use the doctors that are there, hopefully through rural opportunity zones. The one thing we don't want to do, and there are a lot of Democrats who are saying falsely that this will help rural health care, and that is we don't want to expand Medicaid in Kansas. It will not help rural health care. And unfortunately, there's some Republicans who haven't gotten the message yet. You know, they're projecting that if you increase Medicaid in Kansas, expand it, it'll be $1.1 billion. But in every state where they've done it, the costs have gone way beyond that. In Ohio, they were double that. In another state, there were 4 times that. So don't think it'll just be $1.1 billion. We Republicans have to stand firm and resist the impulse to do that, and don't buy the argument, the fake argument from the Democrats, that that's somehow going to solve our rural health care issues.
Well, it's been my privilege to sit across the table from many rural hospital boards as we've worked through the issues of how they're going to improve their facilities across Kansas, build new ones. So I understand very well the challenges of rural health communities and how they're going to keep their doctors there, offer the level of health care that are necessary to retain their citizens. So I think we have some real challenges there, but we have some opportunities as well. One is right now, there are more doctors graduating from med school than there are residency programs. I think we have a real opportunity to create a rural residency program in Kansas where we integrate doctors into the communities where they can become part of that community and grow organically there and stay there and take care of and raise their families and become part of that community. I think we have opportunities to work with the system that creates the reimbursement system that we have in this state. Because the problem we have is that the rural health care is still having a lot of unreimbursed care. And that's a significant burden on these hospitals. We have the federally qualified health care centers in Kansas that are robust. And they're a great opportunity to partner with our rural health care partners to pull together, to start backfilling these patients and taking care of them before they become emergency room patients. So we have to get creative. Telemed is another area that we can do a lot better in this state. Leveraging the specialists that we have to rural communities so that a patient doesn't have to drive from Ulysses, Kansas to Wichita to get to see a specialist. They can do it through telemed. And we have bills in the legislature right now that are contemplating that.
Gentlemen, you'll have 1 minute for your closing remarks. You'll go in the reverse order as from your opening remarks, and you've been doing such a wonderful job. Stay strong. I believe in you. Your 1 minute starts now, Commissioner Selzer.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thanks to the Republican Party for a really, really nicely organized event. I truly appreciate being able to share my vision with you, and I look forward to the future debates when we'll be able to do the same thing. Bottom line, Kansas has a budget problem. We have a budget problem this year. We'll have a budget problem in 2 more years. We know that's coming. We know that's coming. It is a mess. We need somebody who can thoughtfully think through the issues, every department within the state, making sure we are operating as lean as we possibly can and improve the customer experience at the same time. We're going to focus on that day in and day out. We are going to make Kansas grow again. Right now, we have an expense trend like that, and we have a growth trend like this. That can't work. It's not sustainable. There's 2 steps here. We have to get the expenses at the level that the growth is coming. We have to boost growth and make it work, and then we'll continue to skinny up. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. Thank you.
You guys know my leadership style. You've seen my style in office as Secretary of State for the past 7 years. If I'm challenged, I will stand and fight. And when I do that, the editorial pages will probably say something nasty about me. In fact, the Kansas City Red Star says something nasty about once every month, maybe twice a month. But I don't care, and I will just push right through it, because you have to. They're not going to be on our side. You know, let's just face it, we're in a more combative era in American politics, both in Washington and in Topeka. And the old style where everybody could be happy and shake hands and just laugh it all away is gone. You have to have a fighter. And I'm willing to lead the fight. We've absolutely got to have that now. Now, if you want the status quo, if you want someone who won't rock the boat in Topeka, I urge you not to vote for me. There are other people who will do a great job of that approach. But if you want to see full throttle conservatism in Kansas, then I'm your man. We will go full speed ahead.
Well, this has been a great evening where we could share our viewpoints and differences, and I want to thank the GOP for putting that on. But I also have to thank my lovely wife, Mary, for persevering with me through all this. She has been my rock star, my secret weapon, and 41 years of marriage. Thank you, babe. So look, if you take anything away from this tonight, I hope what you'll take away from my standpoint is that I'm the only candidate up here that has 25 years of CEO experience from the ground up building a company, that's coupled with 4 years of legislative experience, and more importantly, the relationships that are going to be necessary to move Kansas forward. You see, Kansans are tired of the broken promises that they've been handed. They're tired of seeing our state's reputation smeared from lack of leadership. We can do better, and I hope you'll join me and join me in working together to build a better Kansas. Ding.
Well, I only have a minute, so I want to say thank you for everybody attending. Thank you for my wife. She's going to drive me home because I'm tired. But the reality is, Kansas needs and deserves a CEO with 50 years experience in multiple companies that have all been successful and have grown. It is time to put somebody with experience, the skills to put their feet under the table and respond to the needs of you, the people of Kansas. And I am the one that has the backbone, the stability, and the nerve to make a change. I'm willing to shake the tree. I'm not afraid to go forward. I'm not afraid to take the hill, and I will do it for you. If I might borrow a phrase, I will not bend a knee if it costs the people of Kansas their dreams.
One more round of applause to our candidates. Thank you all so much.
Let's raise up. Thank you very much. I'm Mark Kars. I'm your national committeeman. I just have a few closing comments. We'll have 3 more congressional debates, and just stay tuned. We'll be advertising those shortly. They're being formulated currently. I want to first thank our moderators, Jennifer Zambecki, great sense of humor, Ashley McMillan Hutchinson, perfect timer. Our distinguished panel included Rich Feltz from the Kansas Farm Bureau, Dennis Clary from the Realtors of South Central Kansas, Trom No from the Wichita Chamber of Commerce, and Paige Hungate, Wichita State. Yeah, Wichita State, student body president. Great job. I also want to thank Great Plains Television Network for televising this debate across this great state of Kansas. Andy Hoosier from KQAM for broadcasting this debate across the airwaves here in Kansas. And please refer to the sponsors that have helped underwrite this event. And our convention chair, Laura Cox. Where's Laura Cox? Laura Cox. Excellent convention. Where's Laura? Stellar convention. Thank you to our gubernatorial candidates. And now I invite you, along with Helen Van Etten, our national committee woman, to our post-debate event right outside these doors, coffee and cordials. You're all invited. God bless and good night.
Welcome back in, and what a heck of a first Republican debate from the State Republican Convention right here from the Hyatt Regency here in Wichita, Kansas. Again, Andy Hoosier from the Big Talker KQAM, the Mid-America Network. Bob Weeks here with Wichita Liberty TV. That was kind of fun for the first one. What do you think?
It was a lot of enthusiasm in the audience, some for more some more for one than another, but yeah, it was pretty good.
I think it was exciting. It was unique how some of them tried to set the tone. We had a Ken Selzer that really tried to take the Donald Trump mentality of making Kansas grow. Again, it was the ongoing over and over and over, no matter what kind of topic it was. Do you think it helped him?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good slogan, make Kansas grow again, because we haven't really been growing very quickly, so yeah.
I think it was nice. Most of them really stuck in with what they wanted to do and what they've been talking with the campaign trail. Chris Kobach had talked about keeping his campaign promises, being tough on the media, being tough on the left-wing progressives and the Democrats, wanting to be able to consolidate. I think Mark Hutton did really well of trying to be the CEO of the business of Kansas. So I think it did really well.
Well, Wink Hartman had a pretty good comeback. Mark Hutton kind of bragged about being a CEO of businesses for 25 years. Wink Hartman says, well, we could really use someone who's been CEO of businesses for 50 years.
Exactly. So, I think it was really nice. Joining us now with the Sentinel, KSMO, along with Gidget Southway. Do you still do Gidget Southway?
A little bit.
A little bit.
Often. I throw some gossip out there when it's really not really news appropriate or even editorial appropriate.
Exactly.
So,
Denidra Herbert, though, with us.
I throw it out on my blog.
Absolutely. Well, Denidra, we appreciate you coming on. What did you think of the first Republican debate?
You know what? I hate to sound like a cheerleader, but I will be honest. I'm conservative and I'm a Republican, and I really felt like listening to those guys. Like, we have a really Team Republican. We have a great field. Like
really do.
And I didn't necessarily agree with every candidate on every answer, but even the candidates I thought I would be less inclined to agree with had a couple of good ideas that I was like, whoever ends up there, I hope they take this person's idea and runs with it, because we've got some smart folks.
It seemed like Chris Kobach's supporters were probably most vocal, do you think?
Well, I think that might be because, man, that guy has got it. Whatever it is that, I don't know if it's his debate experience or his education or what. He is witty, and he, picks the crowd up in his hands and just kind of massages them and gives them what they want.
I think he is a more polished speaker.
Yes, I mean, I try not to be a fangirl, but sometimes I'm like, that line.
That one, that works. It played well to the crowd.
He's really good at this.
We were just discussing a second ago, but with Ken Selzer playing the Making Kansas Grow Again.
That was very clear.
Do you think that played in his favor, or do you think he overplayed it a little bit?
I'll tell you, I was watching a row of I would call them kids, 20-year-olds-ish, young people, and they were laughing every time he said the line. I don't think in a negative way. I think they'll walk away and remember that he said that. But they were, every time they said the line, they'd nudge each other and laugh. There were about a line of 4 of them, and it was funny. I think it was to his credit.
Sure. I'm surprised that Medicaid expansion didn't come up in the discussion tonight, really, other than a couple of the candidates bringing it up on their own, but being a fronted question of what we're going to do with that.
Well, I think one of the challenges there is that the way they set up the debate, there wasn't necessarily, unless one of the builders brought up that question, and then it just, I guess none of them care, or it wasn't their first question. Also, I do think there's a general feeling that might be decided this session, kind of. Like, if it passes or fails, we might be done, because the match starts going down. Every year it doesn't happen, it gets less and less likely. So maybe people are starting to feel like this is going to be settled by the time the next governor takes office.
How do you think the absence of Governor Collier from the stage tonight affected anything?
I think it's bad for him. I mean, I watched all 4 of these candidates and really got a really good first hearing from them, and I feel guilty saying it, but I kind of forgot. I mean, I don't know. I didn't notice an empty chair. I was sitting kind of off to the side, but I almost wonder if he wouldn't have been better off saying, keep the chair there, unless it was on the other side of the stage, which I guess is possible, but he...
With how much excitement was in the governor's debate tonight, the fact that Governor Collier didn't make it, ended up not making it because he wasn't feeling well, do you think that hurt him a little bit tonight? Because there was a lot of energy, as you mentioned. I mean, we had a record crowd tonight for the first debate, even for the Republican convention altogether. Do you think that hurt him a little bit by not being able to attend?
It's really hard to say, because I don't know what your viewership numbers are going to be, how many people listened. I feel like 80% of the people in this room anyway, they kind of they have their horse, and they're sticking with the horse they rode in on. And Even though Dr. Collier wasn't here, he had plenty of fans here, and they weren't going to change their minds. So it will be interesting to see how the news media changes their, I think not getting the press hurt him. I do think it will hurt him.
We've talked about the two wings of the Republican Party,
Yes.
the conservatives and the moderates. Who do you think was most represented here today?
Oh, the conservatives. I mean, this is a Republican primary, and in Kansas, if you're running in a Republican primary, even if your heart is not conservative, in this crowd, you should probably pretend. And I'm not saying they did, but I'm saying they knew their audience.
Can we judge the rating of the governor or the candidates so far based on the applause they got during some of these? I mean, Chris Kobach started off right off the bat with a really large applause, and he gained a lot of the excitement per se right off the bat. As you mentioned, he did kind of massage the crowd a little bit tonight, but by the end of it, everybody seemed to be getting some really good response.
I wouldn't measure anything on the applause simply because I think, for example, like Hutton, he's from Wichita, and he clearly brought a large fan club with him. I don't know. I don't know that you can put that through the rest of Kansas and say that's what's that's where we're at. Yeah, that's
sure.
I'm not saying there it isn't, but I don't. And then Kobach had some really great lines that got a lot of applause, and the other candidates, Commissioner Selzer and Mark Hutton, they all had some really good lines that were meaty that I think people they like the lines, not necessarily you're my candidate. Just I like what you're saying.
Do you think any candidates who are more able to describe specific solutions to problems than the others, or were some kind of wishy-washy?
Don't you think so? I do. I mean, that's what Kobach was really good. I was trying to write down what he was saying, what all the candidates were saying, and he got up there once when he talked about the school funding, and he said you've got a teacher making $55,000 in the room, you've got a classroom of 25 students, they're getting $14,000. I mean, he was going fast, but I know those statistics were fairly accurate. And when he said we're spending $350,000 on that classroom and only $100,000 is going into that classroom, where's the other $250,000? Doesn't get much more specific than that.
And I think his penny plan, in other words, cut each agency by 1% per year, that's specific in one way, but not specific in where's that penny going to come from in each agency.
I think that's smart, though, because if I were governor, I would tell the agency heads the governor gets to appoint most agency heads. Your job, your mission is to come up with where that 1% cuts. I'm not going to get into your weeds, but you're going to spend this much money and not a penny more. Isn't that the Rand Paul plan, the penny plan? Isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's John Hannity who's famous for that too.
Okay, that's a great idea. I couldn't remember I know it wasn't Kobach's original plan, I'll just say that.
And I think Marsha Blackburn in the House of Representatives, I think, has a bill to reduce spending by 1% every year, gets a few co-sponsors, but that's it.
That's unfortunate because it's a great plan, and he's right. There's probably not a single place in the budget where you couldn't cut a penny for every dollar.
Candidates for all offices that say we're going to cut spending, but it doesn't happen very often. Do you think any of these men up here, and why are there no women, by the way, but any of these men really have the wherewithal, the gumption to actually cut spending?
I hope so, Bob. I really hope so, but we need it, but I don't know. Because once you get really into the weeds and get specific, it does sound great to say I'll cut a penny here, but once you say my penny's going to be the new carpet that you get every year in your building, everybody gets all bent out of shape.
Every penny has its own constituency, they
Every
say.
penny has a constituency.
And you'll know who those are when you try to cut something there. So, Denidre, I kind of brought it up in a offhand way, but why are there no women candidates in the Republican Party? Do you know why, or should we be worried about that?
Diversity of the Republican Party.
I hope not. Well, so on my Facebook page today, I was taking pictures of the candidates and putting them up there, and I had a lot of weirdos, like keeping count. Oh, that's a lot of old white men. That's a lot of, and I like to think the Republican Party doesn't think like that. Like, we think about diversity of thought more than diversity of skin color or gender or. It's frustrating to me that it's come to that, but I do think not having them on the stage might be a challenge, but there's a broad number of ideas up there that I think, I mean, I'm a woman, and I found them very appealing.
Of course, the Democrats only have one
Well,
woman
that's what I was going to
candidate
say. They
too,
don't have,
so,
they're not
yeah.
like batting 1,000. And at least one of these guys is going to choose a woman for lieutenant. I mean, at least one, and probably the rest of them. We know who Collier's lieutenant is, but probably the rest of them are going to choose women.
You know, that's something that never came up tonight. Is what qualities? Not only who, but what qualities would you like in your lieutenant governor?
Well, did you guys notice the bromance between Hutton and Selzer?
I did see kind of a partnering up there between Hutton and Selzer, and then Kobach and Hartman, and they kind of tag teamed a little bit off of what they were each feeding each
I was
other.
seeing some I was getting some bromance vibes from both sets.
You were up a lot closer than we were.
There you go. You were able to see it. The looks. You
know what? It wasn't just the. Well, you heard him though. Like Hutton would say, "Oh, Selzer's idea is great," and Selzer would say, "Oh, Hutton knows what he's talking about." And but they also, their body language, I thought, was suggestive that
maybe they need a little help with one another. Maybe.
I feel like there's a bromance brewing.
There you go. Denidra Herbert, Gidget Southway, also with the Kansas Sentinel. By the way, how's the Sentinel going for you guys?
It's going very well. It's going very well. We're getting more and more readers every day, and I think some of the stuff we're covering is starting to leak into the mainstream a little bit too, which is
actually call some people out that need to.
Hopefully.
Once in a while.
Hopefully it's working.
Once in a while. Last question before we let you go, but going into this, did you necessarily have a candidate, and by the end of this, did this change your opinion on anybody?
No, I don't have no one believes me when I say this, but it is sincere. There's several of the candidates that I really, really like, and I have questions with all of them. A lot of the candidates don't have any voting records, which makes me nervous. We're just basing our vote on what they're saying, and a lot of them sound awfully good, so that's nice to hear. But so I don't have a horse, but I was very impressed by all of them.
Denidra, appreciate you swinging by with us.
No one disappointed.
That's no one disappointed. That is a good positive thing for the Republican convention.
Yeah, it was.
Thank you so much for coming in there.
Can't wait to watch the broadcast.
I think positive feedback. I think positive feedback from everybody when it comes to the excitement from this message that they said, and surprisingly, yet not surprisingly, not really a lot of confrontation or tension between them, but really on the same page, just doing it in the same way. So it's kind of nice to hear that as the general theme of the Republicans, but in different ways under the umbrella.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're being joined away here.
Yeah, now we're being joined. Really excited to be able to get him on the show with us. Former Congressman from the 4th Congressional District, Mr. Todd Tiahrt. Todd, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. It's good to be here with you.
Hey, great. You got to experience the very first governor's Republican debate. How do you think it went?
Well, I thought it was very interesting. It was too bad that we didn't get all the candidates up there, although that is, it kind of distracts when so many people are answering questions. But I really liked that the candidates were very straightforward in their answers, and some of them understand how Republican voters think better than others. And so it's easy, you can kind of hear that in the responses. I'm a little biased because I like Wink Hartman. I think, as a country and as a person, I can't hire a billionaire. But our country did, and our economy is really strong now. There's a new look at how the government functions up there. They're reviewing the regulations. They're cutting. We've already had tax cut, so they're reducing regulations. They've cut taxes. We're expanding energy production. We're trying to do something to reduce the cost of healthcare, and as a result of that, our economy is growing, and my 401k looks better than it did before.
Sure.
I think that fresh look of a businessman looking at how government works would work here in Kansas, and that's why I'm supporting Wink Hartman. I made a decision about a month ago. I want a businessman because I like what's going on in our country, and I'd like that to happen in our state.
Well, and we've talked about that a little bit earlier today, talking about the outsider mentality that Wink Hartman's really jumped on with, not being the politician, but being the businessman going in to fix it. Mark Hutton's tried to do the same thing as well, being the business construction owner. And then Chris Kobach, even though he's been in politics, coming in and saying he wants to drain the swamp. So that outside mentality really seems to be the theme this year.
And I hope that carries over through to whoever gets elected governor. I think if it was probably today, it might be Chris Kobach. He seems to have quite a bit of popularity in the Republican Party, and I think he'd do a very good job. But from my perspective, I know that there is in Topeka, there's kind of a group think. They try to approach problems the same way we've done in the past, and I think it's nice to have somebody come in with a fresh look and saying, I don't know the answer today, but I'm going to go get the smartest people I know to give me advice. I'm going to make a decision, then I'm going to move on to the next problem. We don't do that now. We kind of kick the can down the road, or we go send it to another committee. And I know this because I came out of politics. I spent probably with my state service almost 20 years in politics. Having a businessman come in, like we're seeing in Washington, would be, I think, helpful to our state. I'm glad they're taking an outsider approach too, though, because I think we're ready for that. I think America's ready for that.
So we have, at the national level, Donald Trump has had quite a bit of success using his outside businessman's experience. But on the other hand, there are some missteps that people worry about. And they blame that on him not having the experience and perhaps the mindset of a politician. Do you think that's something that your preferred candidate, Wink Hartman, can overcome?
I think Wink would make some. I think tonight the way he viewed how committees work, for example, wasn't quite exactly how committees work, but that's okay. You know, and I got to thinking about Donald Trump and how he, makes mistakes. And a lot of people say, well, I wish he wouldn't tweet so much. But then I found out that he's got more than 40 million followers on Twitter. And on a good night on CNN, they have 800,000 people watching, or maybe 1 million. Fox News maybe has almost 3 million, a little less than 3 million. Well, he's got 40 million to pick up and say, what's he tweeting today? So he's reaching a lot more people. And I think Wink, has that same kind of refreshing look that he's going to do things that aren't quite like we are used to. But it's a fresh look at how our problems are going to get solved.
Another thing about the tweeting is that a lot of the news coverage is actually showing the tweet itself and not what someone's interpretation
I know, it's a
of what he
direct contact
said,
with us voters, and I like that.
Yeah. Who's the most prolific tweeter of these guys, do you know?
I don't know, we're going to have to see.
Okay. Yeah, when I get home, I'm going to look up who's got the most followers.
I don't think that I follow. Of course, after I got out of politics, my Twitter account went, I just shut it off for a while. So I started back up, and I'm not following everybody yet, but I get some tweets. But I don't think we have that kind of a prolific tweeter in Kansas. I mean, what I like about Donald Trump is he knows how to get people's attention, and he's pretty solid on what he believes, and he's willing to stand and fight. And, he's gotten some terrible criticism, and he's made some terrible mistakes. But again, we're moving in the right direction. Our economy is growing. We have more people working now than we've had in the past. We still are having, there was a terrible thing happened in Florida this week, and my heart goes out to those families. But we're starting to look at the problems. The FBI missed some signals. The local community missed some signals. I liked what was talked about tonight about mental health. I liked that Wink talked about dealing with people with mental health, not run them through our jails all the time, but actually get them the treatment they need. This kid had lost his mother and he'd lost his way, and the signs were there, but we didn't get him the treatment he needed, and it resulted in 17 families with a crushing loss.
There was no questions about guns tonight specifically. Do you think that was by design based upon the events this week?
That's a good thought, and I think we should talk about it because our Second Amendment rights are under attack, and we don't need more gun laws. We got one. It's called the Second Amendment.
Right.
But we do have people that are in need that shouldn't have guns. We ought to do something about that. But we also should get them the treatment like this poor kid down in Florida who's going to spend the rest of his life behind bars. And if somebody had gotten to him in time, he may have had a normal life. He may have been able to overcome these mental challenges that he has.
Last question before we let you go here, but
is it a true-false question? Because I'm really good at those.
That's right. Last question before we let you go, former Congressman Todd Tiahrt. But do you think anybody's minds were changed tonight after the debate?
I think so. I think there's some people that saw something they hadn't seen before. I think there's probably many people come into this debate with their minds made up. But I think we saw some fresh ideas here and some new approaches, and time will tell, I guess, but I think so. I think it was a good debate. I think it was well worth it, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
Appreciate you swinging by. The poll this week showed 37% undecided, so tonight could be switching some minds one way or the other.
Yeah.
Appreciate you swinging by, my friend.
Enjoyed it. Good to see you guys.
Hey, thank you very much. Coming up here, we're going to have one of the candidates, Mr. Mark Hutton, is going to join us here in just a minute. But as he had mentioned, as Tiahrt had mentioned, that I think that maybe some minds were swayed tonight. Maybe the undecideds, as you mentioned, close to 37-40% that were undecided may have found their candidate tonight.
Yeah, and how many more debates are there, Andy? I thought I heard some different numbers.
I don't know if we have any confirmed. I know maybe one or two more, but I don't know if there's any definitive for the primaries.
Yeah. And of course, we're going to start having this season where the candidates with the money they've raised are going to start reaching out to voters through mailings, advertisements, and things like that. So we'll have more opportunities to learn.
Exactly. Well, we are really excited now with us here. One of the candidates for governor that just came off the debate stage, Mr. Mark Hutton, with us. And Mark, appreciate you joining us. What a heck of a debate tonight. That was fun.
It was fun, wasn't it? You
That
know,
was a blast.
I tell you, I tell people I really get jazzed up talking about Kansas.
Absolutely.
And this has been a great evening.
Well, coming from the outsider mentality that you've had and that Wink is tried to use as well, with the outsider and trying to be the businessman and lead, and I love the quote that you said, being the CEO of the state and trying to lead in that sense. I think there's a need for that in the state right now.
I believe there is, and what I wanted to emphasize was that I am a CEO first, but I have legislative experience in the relationships that are going to be necessary to move Kansas forward. I know what I'm getting into. Everybody else up on that stage has not sat in the legislature and tackled the issues that our next governor is going to have to hit on.
It's going to be really tough to do so, and especially with this legislature. And give us your thoughts, and this was kind of touched on a little bit during the debate, but working with the legislature and able to do a lot of the things that you want to get done in the state, how do we make that happen?
Well, look, I have a record of getting things done. When I was in the House, we passed a lot of legislation that was bipartisan in nature, but a lot of it that was based on the GOP principles of being business friendly. I chaired the Commerce Department, or Commerce Committee, and where we fixed unemployment insurance, we fixed workers' compensation insurance, we codified welfare reforms. We did a lot of heavy lifting out of my committee. And I did it with the support of all branches of the Republican Party, and we prevailed in getting some good policies passed.
Anything, if there was a Democrat in the room or watching on Facebook or something, what do you think they're thinking of these candidates? Is that something that they could consider turning away from their party and supporting a Republican again?
Well, I've never tried to get in the mind of a Democrat. That's real dangerous work.
That's a hard thing to do.
Yeah, hard thing to do. But I will tell you that, I think when they're looking at all the different candidates, that I'm their worst nightmare, quite frankly. I've unified our party at the legislative level. I'm a businessman that knows how to budget and prioritize spending. And I think I can bring processes to our state that will bring the transparency and the trust that our citizens are so in dire want of, because they're just tired of seeing things the way they are in Topeka. They're looking for somebody with a fresh perspective, but somebody who knows, that has the prior experience of I know I have to dismantle some things to get some things fixed. The other candidates just flat don't have that.
Sure.
And I do.
I'm glad you mentioned the unification of the party, because we talked about this a little bit earlier, but so far we've seen a lot of a tearing in the Republican Party. I mean, we had a vote that even went against the Republican governor to override his veto.
Yeah.
So the Republican Party needs a lot of unification right now, and to mention that, to recognize that, is a really good step, I think, in order to realize that we have potential in the state, and we just have to utilize it.
We need leadership from the governor. Because the drift and the gap in our Republican Party cost us the $1 billion tax increase, because we weren't able to govern under responsible Republican principles. It caused, in both ends of our party, refused to compromise. So instead of finding something in the middle, we drifted to the left. And that's what resulted in the tax increase. It didn't have to be that way. And if we had leadership that would have brought people together from the governor's office, that would have said, instead of just saying, I'm not signing anything, let's sit down and talk about what a solution is to put this state back on the right path. Good, common sense Republican values are good governance.
Last question before we let you go. I know that you got to run, but the next step in the campaign, what's the plans?
Work. We're hitting the road this next week. We're going to be travel. We spend a lot of time in Johnson County, a lot of time in rural Kansas, because we believe that they're 42% of this economy. We believe they've been neglected and they're an undeveloped potential in this state that we have to leverage. It'll help us move away from trying to tax our way out of our problems. We're going to grow our way out.
Real last question. Go ahead, Bob. I know you had something.
I was just going to say, how do you think the absence of Governor Collier tonight affected the debate?
I think
I'm not sure. I mean, my inkling is that it probably kept it a little more civilized.
I see.
Very good. Well, Mark, congratulations on the debate tonight. I think it went really well. Good luck to you on the campaign trail, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate it very much. That's Mark Hutton there, one of the candidates for governor, just coming off the debate stage and had a really strong night, I think, tonight, and getting his message out there. As we mentioned before, it's so important to be able to talk about that message from all of these candidates, which is why I'm so scared that Governor Collier may have a hard time coming back from that, just because of the fact that he wasn't able to get that message out today.
But he is the governor.
He is the governor, though, so he can advance a little bit more than some others by just the actual policies he does while he's in the seat currently. But Mark Hutton, I think, had a really strong night tonight.
Andy, did anybody tonight make a gaffe or anything? No one did they? I don't think
so. No, they didn't call each other out. I think it was pretty solid when it came to really kind of a unified party in that sense. Let's go back to our guest now. Another one of the candidates for governor with us, currently Secretary of State Chris Kobach with us. Chris, how are you, my friend?
Yeah, great to be with you. How you doing?
Great to have you back on. Congratulations, a great night tonight.
Thank you.
We could feel the energy in the room from the time you went onto the stage to talk about a lot of the ideas.
Well, it was an energetic crowd, and I was just preaching what I've been trying to do in the Secretary of State's office, cut government. As I said in the debate, we went from $7 million a year budget down to 4.6, and I've proven you can actually shrink government. And when I came, I'm a conservative, and I've been studying politics, my whole adult life, and I've always heard this mantra that government never shrinks. It's impossible. And so, I wanted to try an experiment. I now control an agency. I want to, in addition to all the things I want to do to secure elections, I want to see if we can actually shrink the agency, and we did it. And so now I'm saying, look, if I can do it in one agency, why couldn't I do it for the whole state? And I want to try.
How important is it to try and get the legislature to wake up to that as well? I mean, you guys have touched it briefly on the debate stage as well, but trying to get the legislature to go on board. The Republicans lead in the Congress, but yet at the same time we're divided in that sense. How can we get them to unify?
Well, and if you're talking about the state legislature, the numbers do not tell the whole story. So if you look at the numbers, we've got 85 out of 125 state reps. We've got 31 out of 40 senators in the GOP. But when it comes to translating GOP ideals and principles into policy, we're not doing so well. and that, unfortunately, is because many so-called Republicans vote with the Democrats on important issues. And so it's going to take educating people. It's going to take one of the things I talked about tonight on the debate stage. I think we need recorded committee votes. That's one of the ways in which some legislators pretend they're Republicans when they're talking to the folks at home, but then when they go to Topeka, they take all these unrecorded votes in committee to kill conservative bills. So
what's preventing that from taking place?
Because they aren't going to record their committee votes unless there's actually some pressure put on them. I think if the governor, a newly elected governor, comes in and says in his first address, I want a bill to record committee votes, the people of Kansas deserve to know. I think they'd have a hard time saying no.
But actually, our legislative leaders, the Speaker and the President of the Senate, they could implement a rule tomorrow.
You're right.
If
they could do that if they wanted to tomorrow.
To go along with that, though,
could an individual committee chair do that also?
Yes, and in fact, there are a few committee chairs, conservative ones, who actually have done it in their committees, but only a very small number.
Small few.
And I would rather see it be a law, so that way if the Democrats take over next year and they decide to suddenly conceal committee votes again, that wouldn't be possible. So I'd rather do it statutorily.
To go along with that, what about the actual being able to present a bill anonymously and actually have sponsors and co-sponsors on there? Would that go along with that transparency?
Yeah, I think that is something else we have to do. I think the recording the committee votes is the most important. I think that is also very important. That would be on the second tier. Yeah, you have what are called committee bills, which are bills that have no particular sponsor named. No one has to take ownership of it. It's just a committee bill. And the problem with that is, writing a bill and introducing legislation, some people will use it as a star on their lapel, but other people don't want you to know that they introduced that bill. And so having people take ownership of the legislation they introduce is also important.
Sometimes I feel, though, that when Democrats maybe see a bill that's sponsored by a legislature they don't like, and I do this too, going backward the other way. If I see a bill that's sponsored by Anthony Hensley, I'm prejudiced against that already. Do you think that we sometimes worry too much about the personalities involved rather than thinking through this bill itself? Is this a good idea or not for the state of Kansas?
I think, any day of the week, what's in the bill is more important than whose names are on it. But I do think it's still important to make people accountable. And if they are going to, be one of the sponsors of a bill, let's know about it. Yeah, there may be some legislators who don't like that particular person, and they might be less inclined to vote for it, but hopefully they'll actually read the bill and and decide that they like it anyway. That's part of the issue too. We have to elect people who are willing to roll up their sleeves and do the hard work. And by hard work, I mean reading tedious bill language. We talk about these metaphors of go to work in Topeka. Well, a lot of going to work is looking at language, page after page of statutory language, trying to figure out exactly what's going to happen and studying the information. It's, the kind of work that needs to be done is people really knowing what the effect of this bill is going to be. And then for us conservatives, it's actually having the courage to take a stand and push it through, even though the editorial page of, the Kansas City Red Star, the Topeka Capital Journal, whatever, the Wichita, the editorial page is
you got some applause for that,
you.
didn't you? The Red Star remark. I think there was some applause. But Secretary Kobach, one issue I know that there was that distinguished the candidates tonight was the idea of initiative and referendum. I mean, I was kind of surprised to hear a couple candidates say, no, we don't support that at all.
Bottom line is this is our government. It's the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And most of the states west of the Mississippi, in the populist era, they adopted the initiative because they knew sometimes legislators or government in general could get out of control or off the rails, and the people might need to step in. And frankly, the initiative has worked for conservative causes very well. Prop 13 in California back in the 70s being one of the
very
high
moments.
moments. Yeah. And so, I think about the things we could solve right now if we had it. And the biggest problem we have right now is a Supreme Court that is outside of its constitutional role. It is disobeying the Constitution and misinterpreting the Constitution in the same decision with the Gannon and these school finance decisions. In a situation like that, if the legislature is unable to do anything about it, then we, the people, could actually correct it through a popular initiative that very clearly restrained the court to a proper judicial role and help preserve our Constitution. So, I know the fear on the other side, and I understand it. In states that have initiatives, sometimes you have, these crazy left-wing initiatives to do things like,
but they don't pass very often.
Yeah, they don't pass. That's exactly what I was going to say. In a state like Kansas, some sort of vegan initiative to stop the raising of cattle, it would just never pass. So, or they do all kinds of things on hunting. They try to restrict hunting and trapping and all that stuff. That stuff wouldn't pass in Kansas, so I'm not really worried about it. But unfortunately, this debate is probably a moot point because in the past 100 years, no legislature has actually adopted the popular initiative. So,
sure.
I noticed another issue that wasn't mentioned, or an issue that wasn't mentioned tonight, really was the idea of school choice. Is that because you think Republicans are unified on that issue, so it doesn't really distinguish between candidates?
I wish Republicans were unified on that issue.
Because school choice would be, I think, a plus on so many levels, even financially.
I'm a big proponent of school choice. I think we have to have it. I think that you see things that are happening in Kansas right now that show that there are many ways to achieve an effective education in Kansas. So in my own family, we do homeschooling, but we use the virtual schools, which is where you have some of the curriculum from the K-12 system of the state and the textbooks and materials. But our homeschoolers are getting those things, and it's costing maybe $1,000 a kid. I don't know, maybe somewhere in that neighborhood, versus $14,000 in a brick and mortar building. And we're seeing private schools in Kansas that are thriving. We're seeing magnet schools. We're seeing all these different things that are working well. And when you have a situation where you've got lots of choices, as you should have, then ideally you don't want to give one choice, the government school, a favored position where it gets all the revenue, and none of the other choices are given any financial support. So I think the time has come for vouchers in Kansas. I wish we could say that the Republican Party is unified. It's in our platform, but unfortunately there are too many Republicans in the legislature who haven't read the platform lately or really don't care to.
Sure. Last question before we let you go, but what's next for the campaign trail?
Well, we're traveling around the state quite a bit, so I have to check my schedule. It's gotten to the point where I honestly don't know what the next stop is. Well, I do know for the next couple of days. I'm actually flying out to Washington, D.C. tomorrow to go to the National Secretaries of State meeting in Washington, D.C. I'll also be meeting with the president while I'm out there, and hopefully doing some good things, and then coming right back to Kansas on Tuesday and then getting back on the campaign trail
Busy
Tuesday
guy.
evening. Yeah.
Busy guy indeed. Well, good luck to you on the campaign trail. We'll talk to you again soon, but great debate tonight. I think it worked really well.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
There we go. Chris Kobach, Secretary of State candidate for governor right there, as he did a phenomenal job tonight. And a lot of people really encouraged by the message that he and the other candidates had talked about tonight, I think.
Yeah, I think, there is a lot, I think, for Kansas Republicans to be proud of tonight. I think we've got a good crop of candidates. Really wish that Governor Collier had been there on the debate stage too. But like we said, he is
He set his own platform.
Well, that's true. And also he, more than anyone, really has the chance and the problem with this upcoming legislative session. If he can guide us through everything that's wrong, then he'll be in a great chance to make a case for winning the primary. Otherwise,
Exactly.
not so good. Yeah.
Not so good, exactly. I do want to ask you a little bit later on the issue. I was a little surprised of the corrections facilities and the corrections idea when it came to our state prisons and kind of the discussion that went along with that. We'll do that in just a second, but I am excited. Candidate for the 2nd Congressional District that was in the audience tonight spectating, Mr. Tyler Tannehill, is with us. Tyler, great to have you on here. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much.
Hey,
really
thank you very much.
Yeah.
How do you think the debate went?
You know, it was a great debate. I think we had a lot of good ideas coming out. Chris Kobach looked very polished. I think Wink Hartman had a lot of solid ideas, and Hutton was very passionate about his issues. So, I think the Kansas voters are going to have a really interesting decision with this primary. But I think, either way, we've got some great candidates that can, tackle a lot of the issues Kansas is facing.
Do you think that maybe some individuals changed their mind based on the candidate they supported today? It started off with a lot of excitement for like Chris Kobach when he went up, but by the end of it, everybody had, it seemed like a lot of support from the majority of the crowd. So I think a lot of people warmed up to some that they may not have anticipated to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, Chris clearly has, the name recognition. He's been in Kansas politics for a very long time, and he's done a great job representing Kansas, from perspective here at home as well as in D.C. But yeah, absolutely, everyone stepped up tonight. Everyone, showed that they can be in this race. They're going to have a fight ahead of them. So, we got a fight in 2nd District too, but I think they're ready for it too. So.
Are you noticing a unified Republican Party? It's been kind of the ongoing theme. Even before the debate, we were talking about it, the party having some difficulties finding the tone, what we wanted to do, trying to distance ourselves from Governor Brownback, but trying to embrace conservative principles at the same time. Do we see an opportunity for a unified Republican Party?
You've seen it here these last few days, here in Wichita. People have the same theme, pro-life, for a Second Amendment, and the tax deal nationally that has been dealt with, thanks to Donald Trump, and then here in Kansas, cut spending. That's the common theme that everyone's kind of getting around. Obviously, school finance is a big issue. Everyone has a little bit different views on that. So I think the school finance issue that's going to get dealt with here in the next few months in Topeka could potentially play out in the governor's as well, depending on their stance and how involved they are and vocal they are and what they believe in that.
Sure. I got to ask you, with your campaign for the 2nd Congressional District, you've gotten a lot of media and a lot of social media response when it came to the giveaway that you're doing.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, so obviously this is our big Kansas Republican convention that's held once a year. A month ago, my staff and I sat down and said, how can we kind of bring light to my campaign? I am the newest one in the race. What can we do? So we had a decision that we were going to give away an AR-15, and we launched on Tuesday. And then unfortunate events, did happen in Florida on Wednesday. We had that meeting. What are we going to do? Are we going to pull it? Or are we going to keep it?
Sure.
We made that decision to keep it, to start that dialogue. Obviously, my wife and I, our hearts are broken. We feel for those families as parents of a small child. But hearts and prayers, that seems to be the general response of my party. I'm here to provide a solution. I'm not running the 2nd District to tackle easy issues, and we have some tough issues to do. How do we uphold the Second Amendment? Keep that true to their founding fathers, what they believed in, as well as keep our children and our teachers safe in schools. The sticker's not working anymore in front of the window. Big fan of
I don't feel safe by a sticker.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of the Faster Save Lives program. It's out of Ohio. It's a nonprofit. It's trained over 1,100 educators in the schoolroom to conceal carry specifically to protect students in classrooms. It goes through crisis management as well as the ability to provide immediate first aid if an unfortunate event does happen. I was in the military. I was overseas. That critical moment of an injury does happen. You do need to provide immediate first aid while somebody else can come in and you have the higher echelon of care. Is it the absolute solution? I don't know. Let's have a discussion. The comments, the threats, the hate tone that I'm getting from the left.
What kind of response have you gotten from this?
Most of it is, I'm a horrible person, not fit to raise my son. We should give up for adoption. Some sexual harassment to my wife has been very interesting take on it. A lot of death threats.
I'm sure that relates to the Second Amendment in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, exactly. So, we're here to have a dialogue. Like I said, I'm 31. I'm the youngest one in the race. I'm not here to solve the easy problems. I'm here to solve the hard issues. So when you talk about Social Security, everyone says the future generation is not going to have a Social Security system. Hey, guess what? That's me. So let's not deal with it when I'm 65, 67, 70. Let's tackle it now. So our next generation of veterans, it's time to get to DC. If you're a Republican, Democrat, put your name in the hat. So we have to find solutions for tough problems, and that's why I'm here.
Sure. Well, congrats. Go ahead.
Yeah. So there were no questions involving guns tonight. I don't think the topic was brought up at all. Is that because Kansas Republicans are united on those issues, or is it simply too soon after the shootings this week to talk about?
Yeah. So it's interesting. When you do look at the Facebook page, or I received over 350 voicemails of hate yesterday on my campaign line. Most of them are from out of state. Organizations basically had a cue card in front of them and they read off a response. When you get with people around here that are like-minded conservative individuals, very supportive in it, pro-Second Amendment. So I do think that the party is kind of all in line with protecting the Second Amendment.
It's a big issue, and with someone like you, especially with the giveaway that you're doing and the heat you're getting from it, to have at the federal level. I know right now we're talking about national reciprocity. We're talking about the state reciprocity, which turned into a repeal of carry on campus, which was unfortunate at the statewide level. So it's good to bring it out in the open, and I wish it would have been addressed, but I think just about everybody in the room, like you mentioned, kind of would have been unified on being able to stay staunch when it comes to protecting the Second Amendment.
It's a crowded primary for the governor's race as well as mine, and they're looking for who's different. What are their policy differences, and how, who believes what. Second Amendment rights are a pretty common theme in our party. So.
Sure. Tyler, well, good luck to you, my friend. We'll get you on the radio, get you on the TV to talk a little bit more about your campaign. We got about 30 seconds left, but what's your next step when it comes to your campaign trail?
Yeah, so, I've been kind of behind the desk and making the phone calls, getting support. Monday we're launching Me Out, so I'm going to be all across the district, look out, and be calling businesses, getting tours, talking to the people. My big issue now, I'm going to launch my ag policy. We're getting some final touches on it, but again, next generation into, we have a critical problem with the farmers, especially in the 2nd District in Kansas as well. They're at retirement age. Next 5, 10, 15 years, we're kind of in trouble.
Sure.
So how do we get that next generation into agriculture, to preserve that way of life that Kansas works so hard to do?
Well, good luck to you, sir. We'll chat soon.
Hey, thanks guys so much. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it very much. Tyler Tannehill, candidate for 2nd Congressional District, also here being able to enjoy the first Republican gubernatorial debate. We got to take a break, but when we come back, we will have State Representative John Whitmer back with us, and we can talk on his take. I know him coming from the Wink Hartman response, so we are looking forward to that. But we do got to take a break. When we come back, we'll wrap up our coverage from the first Republican governor's debate right here. Appreciate you sticking around. Stay here.
Hello, I'm Christy, and I'm here with Cambry. She is the 2018 Great Strides Honored Hero for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. Help add more tomorrows for kids like Cambry.
We have an upcoming walk and we have a great time every year. Help us raise awareness and money to find a cure for kids like me.
Harry Street Carpet is bigger and better than ever. We have a massive selection of carpet, tile, and hardwood flooring. We also carry granite and quartz countertops, as well as cabinets and more to complete your renovation or new build. All housed in our new 40,000 square foot facility. Stop in now and save up to 30% on in-stock carpeting for residential and commercial use. Come see us or give us a call for a free estimate and complete your home at Harry Street Carpet.
Jeff, what's wrong?
Well, Michelle, I'm scared that people are going to be afraid to come on out to the country and get the best prices on Chevy, Buick, Hustlers, and Polarises.
Why would they be scared?
My brother's hillbilly beard.
Or your belly.
All right, boys. None of that is going to scare people away from coming to Countryside Motors. You guys have the most amazing deals.
Or your breath.
So take the short drive down 35 and come see us at Countryside Motors in Wellington, Kansas.
Hello, I'm Chris Kratzer, owner of Wichita Tire and Alignment. With low gas prices, people are driving more than ever. The most precious cargo you carry in your vehicle is your family. Their safety should be your biggest concern while driving. That's why it's important to have good quality tires and proper alignment. At Wichita Tire and Alignment, our state-of-the-art equipment and trained technicians can enhance the safety of your vehicle.
Let our family take care of your family. Come see us at Wichita Tire and Alignment.
Sometimes appearances aren't what they seem. Contrary to how it may look, the Spectacle Shop is definitely open and looking forward to helping you find the perfect pair of glasses. Like this young and exciting line from Katuma Eyewear, available just in time for the holidays. Finely handcrafted in Italy, each frame combines bold and unique materials and colors. Find these fine frames and more at the Spectacle Shop, 306 North Rock Road, and here to stay.
People used to have to entertain themselves in very interesting ways.
Hey guys, watch this!
Thankfully, we don't have to do that anymore. Instead, we can watch Great Plains Television. Channels 26 and 30 are chock full of entertainment. So we can do this instead of this.
Hey, it's Andy Hoosier from the Voice of Reason on the Big Talker KQAM and the Mid-America Network. If you want some conservative news talk for the state of Kansas, this is your home. You're not going to get it anywhere else. When we talk conservative, we talk the election. We want to know where our tax money's going, and this is the only place you're going to get it. No more hashtag fake news. No more liberal bias in the mainstream media. It's time for conservative talk in the state of Kansas.
Don't forget to watch Andy Hoosier, the Voice of Reason, weekday mornings at 6 a.m. and again at 6 p.m. on KGPT 26.10.
Yee-hoo! I'm about to be on TV.
What's all the hubbub, Jack?
My commercial's about to come on Great Plains Television. Oh, be quiet. Here it comes. Here it comes.
That's right. You can advertise right here on Great Plains Television. With over 15 channels that reach over 660,000 viewers in South Central Kansas, we offer the frequency and value to get the results you need. Contact us now to get your commercial on the air and drive new customers through your door. Great Plains Television, frequency, value, results.
We interrupt this program to bring you an important message. A mysterious and highly entertaining signal has been intercepted for the city of Wichita, Kansas. We've never seen anything quite like it before. It contains a wide variety of fun and exciting programs like classic TV shows, movies, local programming, and more, all on KGPT 26. Our experts are currently analyzing this signal to better understand how one station could possibly provide such a high level of entertainment. Your normally scheduled programming will resume now.
Welcome back in, broadcasting live from the Hyatt Regency here in Wichita, Kansas, wrapping up the first Republican gubernatorial debate of 2018, getting ready for the midterm elections, and everybody seems a little hyped up about it. I'm Andy Hoosier, again, along with Bob Weeks, my co-host, and with us now, State Representative John Whitmer, back with us after being the Wink Hartman supporter at the beginning.
Yes.
Are you still Wink Hartman supporter at the end?
I am still on the Hartman bus.
Okay.
So we don't have a train, we have a bus.
They got the bus, that's right.
Still on the bus, it's parked outside.
The hashtag Fed Up bus, yeah.
The Fed Up bus, that's right. And it is still parked outside. But you know, I found out something as we were sitting here talking. Do you know it's Bob Weeks' birthday tomorrow?
Bob, you know, I've sat here for the last 3 hours. He knew that. The last 3 hours I sat next to him, didn't even say a thing.
Happy birthday.
Well,
Maybe that's where the governor is. He's out buying you a birthday gift.
Yeah,
there we go.
maybe so, yeah.
See,
That would explain
the best birthday gift is having a Republican debate, right?
No.
No, okay, all right. No. I tried. At least that would have been my best birthday gift. Yes, politics.
Bob would rather have something for his cat.
How about world peace?
There we go. Or having the cat run for governor. I mean, we already had a dog.
We have a dog in the race.
See, there you go.
I have the most beautiful cat in the state.
Oh my
See,
goodness.
there it is. There it is. Making cats great again is what it's all about.
This is perfect.
This is perfect.
I had to.
Well, seriously, if
We're
I
getting
could
punch
inject a
drunk
note
here.
in seriously.
Been at this since 7 a.m. Come on.
You know, there was a question about health care, and
yes.
I noticed that Wink had an answer that was distinct from everybody else, which is talking about concierge medicine. And if you could explain that a little bit, because concierge, that sounds like something that rich people can have, but not everybody else. So tell us a little bit about what
I'm
that
not
means.
I'm not fully versed in but my understanding of concierge medicine is essentially it's like going to a restaurant and ordering off the menu. You just sort of pick and choose your items, and basically that's what concierge medicine would do. It allows you to get out of the rut of this current system we have with buying insurance, where you would go to your doctor and you'd have an individual personal relationship with your physician. You'd buy the services that you'd need, and that's what you would pay for on a use basis. So I need a physical, so I go and pay for my physical, and it's a direct relationship, patient-client, patient-doctor relationship, where they buy the service. Because there's no insurance provider, it's significantly less than the cost, out-of-pocket cost to the patient.
I thought it might also mean something like the System Atlas MD
Exactly,
here in Wichita
yes.
that Josh Umbear set up, where you pay a monthly fee, like I think for people my age it's $75 a
nominal,
month
yes.
for unlimited
Correct.
Visits, and they have the ability to do lab tests and other
Correct.
things very much less expensive. They do not take insurance, so a lot of doctors' offices, they have many people devoted just to handling all the paperwork.
Right. Well, and that's
so.
part of the reasons it's less expensive is because they don't have that overhead. And Atlas, I think they office in Mr. Hartman's building. I think that's why he's familiar with it.
They've got several offices now around town.
Yes,
but
yes.
They've grown to their credit. So he had that answer, but nobody else did. So I think that's one example of a candidate distinguishing himself tonight.
I did like Secretary of State Kobach's answer on Obamacare, though, because, as right now, we've just had the hearings in the Senate again on expanding Medicaid in Kansas. And they're already pushing. I've already received the emails again about the need to expand Medicaid. And I really appreciated the Secretary just articulating again, we cannot afford this. We're looking at a $2 billion price tag to expand Medicaid in Kansas, and that assumes we even come in at the number, the 130 to 150,000 they're anticipating. If we do what every other state that's expanded, if we have more enrollees than we're expecting, it could cost upwards of $4 billion. We cannot afford it, and I was glad to hear Secretary Kobach articulate that.
I am surprised, though, that generally the question wasn't brought up of just Medicaid expansion in itself. I mean, we talked about education, we talked about the taxes, we talked about the transparency, but Medicaid was not a talking point that a question came up and said, hey, what do you guys think about doing that?
Well, and even you mentioned taxes, but that only came up as a tertiary second topic.
Sure.
Nobody really asked just straight out, what did you think
What are you
about
gonna do with taxes?
Exactly, because I would have liked to have heard some of the candidates, because some of them have a record of voting for tax increases. I would have liked to have heard them talk about that. I would love to have heard the governor talk about it, because he's going to have the option one way or the other this session probably of vetoing a tax increase. And I'd love to get him on the record. I mean, we hear he's listening a lot, but he's not giving a lot of answers. I would love to have had him here to talk. Hopefully he'll feel better for the next one.
Sure, absolutely. Last question before we let you go, State Representative John Whitmer. But overall, stepping away from being a supporter of Wink Hartman, but do you think...
There we go.
There you go.
There we go.
But overall,
that was
the
too
crowd...
easy to do
that's
that.
Yeah, well,
see, we need to be aware of this
here,
guy.
I put it right back. There we go. Okay.
But do you think overall, some people that may have been on the fence of somebody or didn't know who they were going to support, do you think they walked away with a concise answer of who they thought they would like in this race?
I think people got a lot of different perspectives on folks tonight. And the biggest thing I heard, Mr. Hartman, a lot of people had talked to him before or had seen him, but didn't see the humor. And tonight, I think a lot of people observed the fact that this guy's got a sense of humor, and the line about the prairie chickens and talking about some of that stuff. I think people really got a chance to see the person behind some of the rhetoric and some of the bus and the he's just a guy who's trying to help things out.
We had one of the best lines of the night when I think it was Mark Hutton said, I'm the only candidate that has 25 years experience as a chief executive officer, and then Wink Hartman said in the next response, well, the reality is we need someone with 50 years.
Yeah, 50 years and multiple companies.
Exactly.
Just to kind of point out the difference between the two.
John,
and that's what these debates are for.
Exactly. John, we appreciate it very much.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, and I'll be listening to your radio show on Monday. So.
Hey, appreciate it very much.
Thanks,
State
guys.
Representative John Whitmer right there, as being a fan and a supporter of Wink Hartman, but at the same time being able to come in with from an inside perspective as a legislator, and knowing what he's going to be able to do with that seat. So appreciate that very much. We do have to thank, by the way, Mr. Craig with The Honest Media, co-host of The Honest Media here, as you were able to kind of round up some of these guests for us. We really appreciate that very much.
You are very welcome. I perused the crowd and found everybody I could.
Found everybody.
And convinced them all to come on. So,
what do you think of the debate? How do you think it went so far?
I thought it was a really great debate. I thought it came down between two people, honestly. So you can judge for yourself who that is, but it's between two people, in my opinion. And I'd like to see him get a lot stricter on a few more policies. I would like personal property tax gone. I want the grocery tax gone, which we're one of 7 states in the entire country to have that, and it's complete BS that we got to pay taxes on the food that we eat.
Sure.
One of 7 states in the country.
Sure.
Right? Personal property tax gone, because if you're paying taxes on property, even if you paid your entire house off or a car, you don't own that. The government comes seize it. I want that gone.
Sure.
Well, Craig, how do you think the absence of Governor Collier affected the debate tonight?
Well, I have no idea because he wasn't here.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I have no idea. He wasn't here.
Do you think that may hurt him?
Well, of course it's going to hurt him. It's between 2 people, and you can guess who it is. I'll give you a guess.
Sure.
Who is it?
Sure. Well, Chris Kobach.
Yeah.
And Wink Hartman.
Yeah, and Wink Hartman.
Well,
And
but
in my past, I've had some disagreements with Wink Hartman, but he seems to really came around. But he still doesn't show up to do interviews, even though we just had his guy here.
Well, I will say, though, that I think, though, that Ken
And I really
Selzer...
like Kobach, and he's a younger guy, a smart guy. And I was talking to him in the back about the property tax issue. He totally agrees with me on it, and the grocery tax thing.
Sure.
Totally agrees with it. It should be gone. And what are we doing with all this money they're collecting? We're building roads. We're fixing roads that don't need fixed every other week. It's stupid.
Sure. We appreciate that, Craig, very much. Last question before we got to let you go as well, but your perspective, I know that you said that Kobach and Hartman kind of came out as shiners tonight, which I thought was true to some degree.
Yes.
But Ken Selzer, Mark Hutton, do you think they gained any support tonight?
Well, yeah. I'm sure a large amount of support because they also made good points. And a large majority of people probably had no idea who they are, including myself.
Sure.
Because I keep abreast of national and geopolitical issues more than I do local. And they all made some really good points, but there was 2 big shiners tonight, and that was them.
There we go.
No one really made any mistakes or gaffes or anything.
No, I didn't
like
see
that
nobody
too,
say nobody said nothing dumb or anything. Everybody did a great job. I mean, they're all kind of running on the same platform, saying the same thing,
Sure. Got to wrap it up, Craig. We appreciate it very much. We want to thank all of our sponsors. We want to thank all the broadcasts on radio and on TV with Great Plains Television Network, along with KQAM and the Mid-America Network. Everybody across the state, everybody have a wonderful evening. The first Republican debate in the books as we are getting ready for number 2. Bob Weeks, appreciate it, my friend.
It's a pleasure, Andy.
Great to co-host with you. I'm Andy Hoosier. He's Bob Weeks. Everybody have a wonderful evening.